And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, him.
Attention, roll call.
That's right. Good morning, everybody. 8:05 live Eastern time. And of course, I hope you had an awesome weekend. Monday morning with the Finest Unfiltered. And interesting content continues. If you see the thumbnail, check it out. I think this one is pretty telling, right? So from cop to communist. Meet the former cop pushing Mamdani's agenda. So, of course, not to my surprise, Shamsul Haque, who's running for state assembly, pushing some of Mamdani's agenda, who then gets endorsed by Bernie Sanders. And you say to yourself, no street cop would ever endorse this kind of stuff. So sure enough, you look up Shamsul Haque on 50A, and he spent half of his career in internal affairs, gets promoted to lieutenant commander. I'm like, wow, here we go. It makes sense. Shamsul Haque spending half his career in internal affairs, still not retired yet, so he must be running his time. Shamsul Haque is running for state assembly and pushing Mamdani's agenda, and then endorsed by Bernie Sanders. You got to say to yourself, damn. I mean, I knew right away. I said to myself, even before we started looking into the background of Shamsul Haque, there's no way, no cop out there doing intrusive police work, a street cop that understands the bedrock and foundation and fabrication of policing would push this ideology, right? Well, sure enough, Shamsul Haque was internal affairs. Says a lot to me. All right, good morning, fellas. John Mullen speaks volumes to me. Let's get this thing going. I hope everyone had an awesome weekend. I see the chat's already flying around. So good morning, friends and listeners. Let's do it.
Well, I got to push back on your statement, though. You said no street cop would endorse Mamdani's ideology, and I beg to differ because we did a whole episode Friday about a street cop that was endorsing Mamdani's agenda. So, I got to just push back right off the bat because, I don't see a difference.
Real street cop,
I don't see a difference between Shamsul Haque and the entire upper echelon of the NYPD.
No, I said cops. Well, I didn't say the upper echelon.
A lot of them were cops, though. A lot of them have the same mentality that we do on the show. They believe the same exact things that we do. However, they're willing to be used as hand puppets. They're willing to be used as empty vessels. And so, Shamsul Haque, we had a candidate on here for New York State Assembly District 30, Brandon Castro. This is Castro's second time running. He had a large turnout the last election. It came close to winning it, and I believe he was the shoo-in for this election now. Shamsul Haque's running for that seat. But here's the weird thing. Shamsul Haque worked and helped Brandon Castro on his last thing. Shamsul Haque was presenting himself as a more conservative, moderate-leaning person with a strong stance in public safety, actually pushing back at the DSA. Now going forward, Shamsul Haque is running for that seat, and as you could clearly see, I mean, this is almost to a T the type of messaging for Zohran, right? Shamsul, and remember, Zohran never had Zohran Mamdani. It was always Zohran, right? And so if you look at his website, if you look at his political messaging, it's almost exactly to a T exactly what Mamdani used to push it out there. When you go further past just the optics of it, and you actually look at his agenda, it's a complete 180 from Brandon Castro's agenda that he supported just 2 years ago. So, I mean, I the fact that he's a cop disturbs me a lot, but it's not any more or less disturbing than all of these other cops that are now pushing Mamdani's agenda. And let's face it, Tish wasn't a cop, but the fact you're working with him, you're pushing his agenda. Mike LaPetri, chief of department, the fact that you're working under him, you're pushing his agenda. So I think the only thing about that's I think Shamsul I respect a little bit more than I do the upper echelon of the NYPD or anyone looking to get back into the Mamdani administration, only because even though he 180'd, at least he's telling you the truth. At least he's telling you for the truth and telling you that he wants to push this agenda. Now, does he truly deep down believe it? I mean, that's a question for another day, right? Because it's probably just the same grift that the upper echelon of the NYPD has, and everyone surrounding themselves with Zohran Mamdani. So I think it's all part of the same grift. At least he's saying it and not pretending, I love this job. I want to support the men and women in the NYPD. I want to do this. And then going out and really pushing a totally other message. So, I mean, it's going to be a pretty interesting conversation. And for those of you on here, I invited Shamsul Haque on here a while ago. I put a little video about it out yesterday, getting a lot of pushback that I'm misrepresenting what Shamsul actually stands for as far as his political leanings. So we're going to have an in-depth conversation into exactly what he's pushing, his background. And again, Shamsul, you're welcome to come on here, but you know, I'm not afraid to give criticism, and I'm not afraid to take criticism. I'm certainly not afraid of people saying I'm misrepresenting anything. So, you know, you could take that where you want it. So, what's up, Mont?
Yo, what's up, bro? Morning chat, morning viewers. Happy Monday, unfortunately. And I guess it's summertime here in New York City because I'm not wearing a hoodie. Okay. And you know, when I'm not wearing a hoodie, it's hoodie season is officially over around here.
So it's 95 there?
Almost, and it's only the morning already, you know. Yeah. So
is that the change of seasons, the hoodie?
Well, pretty much, yeah. I mean, it's like I said, it's I just took out the garbage and it's already like 70 degrees out there, so you can expect today is gonna be a hot one. Anyway, yeah, I think what John said is spot on with this guy. You know, he's not that much different from the people we talked about here last week, you know. In terms of self-serving, and you don't know where they stand, really. You know, I mean, Shamsul can come on. I'd love to hear where he stands on what his positions are on things, because it certainly looks to me like he's whatever they were before, right? They're not the same as they are now, you know. And we'll bring up other details that kind of indicate that as well. But it's like, again, it's like what John said. These guys are empty vessels, right? They're willing to, you know, they're always looking out for the next opportunity, and they don't come from any sort of principled positions. And that's, as we've seen the last couple of years, I think that's very dangerous because, you know, there are politicians that are pushing certain agendas that kind of, you know, in a lot of ways dismiss the Constitution entirely. You know, we've talked about a super speeders bill and how it basically runs over due process. And when you have politicians pushing these initiatives, you need people you need people who are administrators in government to push back and to tell them, like, no, this is not right. This isn't good. You need other stakeholders, as the World Economic Forum likes to call them, in the ecosystem too, including the unions, the fraternal organizations, all these other people, right, that push back. And what are we seeing? They're not doing that. They're not doing their job. So when you have another guy here who is clearly showing you that he's unprincipled, and he himself is running to be one of those guys in government who are going to be pushing down those unconstitutional measures, and he himself is not principled, then I you know, I don't like it at all. And these guys, people like that, again, give me pause, you know. So,
well, Shamsul Haque's career is storied by internal affairs, and internal affairs clearly has shown they've been the henchmen for the upper echelon. The upper echelon have endorsed progressive wokeness because it's self-serving. They paved the way for their offspring. And I don't think there's no difference with Shamsul Haque. I think you make a good point, John. Your point is that at least he's kind of open about it in comparison to the upper echelon where they just play pretend. Now I'm looking right now. I'm looking at some of the policies here of Shamsul Haque. They sound pretty progressive to me. So if anyone wants to say that his ideals are not progressive and don't mirror Zohran Mamdani, then you need to read again. For some here, advocate for implementation of the HALT Act and eventually abolish solitary confinement. We've heard that before. Those are progressive ideas. I mean, let's let the inmates and Rikers just run around, do whatever they want. I mean, we've gotten to that point. We also hear support communities. Does this sound familiar? Support community-based safety and prevention programs. So a lot of the policies that he's pushing lean towards this community policing apparatus, very similar to Zohran Mamdani. He also says in his policies, pass a rent freeze for rent-stabilized tenants statewide. This idea of free rent. So Shamsul Haque, a lot of his ideals running for state assembly definitely mirrors Zohran Mamdani's policies. We see parallels on many different levels, progressive ideas. You have to ask yourself, how does an NYPD cop, he came on in 2004, same time I did. I came on in January 2004. He came on the same time, but different paths. I said it often. You'll look at two different cops within the police department that work in two different facets, and you can see two totally different careers, two totally different ideals. Now, yes, I don't think any street cop could actually push these ideas. But when we talk about Rodney Harris and others that were actual cops that move up the ranks and eventually become upper echelon, they are no longer those cops anymore. Maybe they were, but they no longer are because they're pushing those ideals, just as Rodney Harris had endorsed a part of the plan of Zohran Mamdani with the community-based apparatus. So he's no longer that cop. And people say, well, he was a hero cop. Maybe he was, but he's no longer that cop because how could he push those ideals? So what we see from Shamsul Haque is these communist ideas from a cop. So you have to ask yourself, and that's why this thumbnail it's kind of funny, but it's so true. From cop to communist, like, who are you at this point? What uniform do you actually hold? Which ideals do you actually believe? Because you took an oath to the Constitution at one time. And a lot of the progressive ideas we see borderline push the ideas of the Constitution and violate them at the same time. So, Marlon, I agree with you. Unprincipled. People that are unprincipled push these ideas. And listen, it's not just New York City right now. I see it on all different levels. You look at places like Washington State. It's almost like become a national level at these liberal states and liberal cities throughout the entire country. Washington State, that's another state pushing out millionaires, taxing the rich right now in Washington State. People are flooding, leaving that state for other pastures. So it's not just New York City. This is happening on a national level. They're moving on lockstep, and it's scary at this time. John, what are your thoughts, brother?
Yeah, man. I don't know, dude. I got a lot of phone calls about Shamsul. Now, one, I worked in internal affairs for 2 years and 8 months. And I worked there while Shamsul was there because he was there the overwhelming majority of his career. So if he worked in internal affairs at any point in that during most of his career, he was there for over a decade. So I think Shamsul, when we want to talk about as a cop, he worked in Central Park Precinct, I believe. He then made sergeant out of there. Supposedly went to the Bronx for a little bit. Then went to Group 27 in Internal Affairs Bureau, where he was an investigator. You know, the guys that were there said he wasn't a terrible investigator, but he definitely had it out for cops. But he wasn't able to really do much because he was only a sergeant. Right? So that's coming from people that work directly with him. He then gets retained by IAB, makes lieutenant, and goes to Group 54 in the Internal Affairs Bureau, which is the force group. So anytime there's a use of force, he investigates that. The knock on him amongst the bosses, amongst investigators and bosses, there's two knocks on him. They say that, one, he was always very critical of the cops and expecting unreasonable things from them. And so he was kind of harsh. But again, even as a lieutenant, you have more sway than you do as a sergeant in internal affairs. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it always comes down to the commanding officer where that case is going to go. So, but they also said that he was afraid to go out on call outs. Now, what a call out is probably the only form of real actual police work that you're doing in internal affairs, other than if you have to lock somebody up or you have to do any type of surveillance or whatever. So a call out is job comes over. NYPD cop, let's say, does something that requires a call out. There's a certain threshold. Hospitalized prisoner based upon force. Prisoner needs stitches. Prisoners being admitted to the hospital. Now, the Internal Affairs Bureau will get notified. They'll send a team out to investigate, to conduct interviews sometimes, but more than likely to do a witness and video canvas. They said as a lieutenant, he would consistently send everybody else out and never wanted to go out. So, I mean, that speaks a lot to his character because not only did you not really partake in the core mission of policing, even in the Internal Affairs Bureau, you wouldn't even do your mission and run out there on the streets to even just do knock on people's doors. Hey, do you have a video here? Hey, did you see anything? Hey, did you hear anything? And that tells me that you aren't able to practice what you preach, you know, and that to me sounds like an NYPD chief. So I think that he has the perfect qualifications to at least be a 2-star on this job. So.
Well, I think he approached it the same way as he approached his career as a cop, because again, well, I don't think I said it, but 38 collars in 6 years, you know? I mean, I think, you know, that you really should be an investigator before you go to IB, you know? I don't understand how is it that IB just gets guys who, you know, especially guys who really didn't do much as a cop, and now you're supposed to investigate cops. I mean, I don't understand. Maybe I'm missing something, but I think you really should be a detective. Why don't they take guys from why don't they draft guys from the DB? You know, draft supervisors from the DB. At least you're gonna get an investigator rather than, you know, how can you expect a guy who didn't do the work as a cop to now have to investigate cops fairly? Of course, he's gonna have it out for cops. He doesn't know the job himself. He's gonna have unreasonable expectations because he never did that job. But like John said, this guy spent a decade in internal affairs, you know, and yeah, I get so annoyed when I hear these stories because I've told you guys before that time I had to go to internal affairs on some BS that they wanted to get me on, you know. And had it not been for a detective that was in there, you know, I remember the lieutenant telling me, "Oh, you're getting one for this. There's no way you're not getting one for this." You know, had I not stood up for myself and the detective not being there, I might have gotten something, you know. But it's just really annoys me that this happens. But yeah, no, I'm sorry, Eric. Yeah,
No. Go ahead, brother. No, you can still go.
No, I was just gonna say how annoying it is again. You know, put guys who do the work, who know the work, and will do the work into internal affairs, so cops could get some measure of fairness.
No, spot on, brother. That's why, you know, as a crime sergeant and a special operations lieutenant, I always really appreciate the fact that when former anti-crime sergeants or former special operations lieutenants themselves were actually drafted to internal affairs, I really appreciate that, because often guys would say, "Oh, damn, how do those guys end up there?" You know, obviously they get drafted, most of them, but I always said, you know, that's great. Those are the guys that you want internal affairs, because those are the guys that did the job, that can really understand, especially when it comes down to a use of force case. They've been in those situations. Those are the guys that you want investigating them. And but what we find often is that cops that actually volunteer for internal affairs, who in most cases didn't have the same view of policing that we did, because they weren't out there doing it. And in what I found, and this is just my opinion, this is based on my observations, because you could argue this, there's no actual data for this. But what I found is that most cops that volunteer for internal affairs have a little hidden bias and disdain towards policing themselves. And I found a lot of those cops that volunteer for internal affairs already had some deep rooted, I guess you could say, marks of hatred towards the police and in the excuse me, the profession itself. And I think a lot of times cops that sign up for internal affairs feel that they're going to take down these bad cops, and really not understanding how police work gets to a point of interpretation and perspective best when you actually did it yourself, and rather than being so critical of cops when you never did the job yourself. So listen, I'm not surprised that he was internal affairs, and I agree with you, Mullen. I think that's a fantastic point, and that's why I bring up that point that I appreciated, is that when someone is an anti-crime sergeant or a special operations lieutenant and they're now in internal affairs, they've done the job. They've done intrusive police work. They've been involved in use of force cases. They know what it is to use force, and it just doesn't appear to look nice. It's an ugly appearance. Now, detectives who are in the squad or narcotics, those are the detectives that should go to internal affairs because they're doing the job. They're doing the actual investigation. So I think that's a very good assessment. I agree with that. And those are the guys that you want internal affairs now investigating cops. But yet we're having cops that don't really have much experience themselves. I mean, a lot of times we see cops that are targeted in the police academy, or with maybe 1 or 2 years on the job as rookies, targeted for internal affairs to investigate cops. How are you investigating cops? You haven't done investigations yourself. You haven't walked the shoes as a cop, but yet you're going to investigate cops at that point. I'm not shocked. It's not shocking. It's funny how everything always fits to pieces. It's almost like Tetris. How Shamsul Haque was in internal affairs for a decade, and he's still running his time. It's very fitting to me. It's wow, no surprise. I mean, you could almost guess what are going to be the characteristics of someone that's internal affairs. Well, not to my surprise, there you go, Shamsul Haque with these progressive ideals. Didn't do much police work. Spent half a decade. Sounds like another PUSSY who is afraid to go out there and do real police work. Huh. What a shocker that he spent most of his time in internal affairs. And then he's going to have the ideals of Zohran Mamdani. I'm not surprised. Are you? Not at all. John, what do you think, brother?
Yeah, I mean, like, I worked there, and I've said it before. Like, I thought similar to you before getting there, but like, I think that honestly, the majority of cops that are in there are afraid of the job, or they wanted to get a detective shield that they were never going to get. Mm-hmm. I don't think that there really is this anti-police vibe to it. Are there some? Yeah, I'm sure, but I wouldn't say there's any more or less than in your command. I wouldn't say there's more or less, people that have a real bias and disdain for police that are regular cops in a patrol command. So I think that the problem in internal affairs is really what Marlon highlighted, is that there's a lack of experience in internal affairs from all the way. Mostly at the top, you'll have guys that were street cops, but as you go down, you'll have people that really just were not good cops. They just wouldn't have gotten anywhere else. So for a career advancement move, you go to internal affairs, you go to the command center, you answer basically jobs, and you do a slight minor investigation. You get a detective shield in 18 months, and then they send you to a group, and you do these investigations that are like blah. But I'll say even the majority of sergeants that get drafted, unfortunately, because training's so bad and all this stuff, I don't think that you really get a fair assessment in internal affairs, not because there's a bias and disdain, because I do think I've seen very good work that people would have got jammed up if not for the work of the internal affairs investigators. I've seen that happen a lot, more often than none. I don't think people celebrate jamming up a cop, but I think there are too many people in there like Shamsul Haque who stay in there their whole career. They don't know the rules and regulations out there on the street. They can't put themselves in the scenario of the police officer, and they really don't understand the procedures that the police officers deal with. When I was in there, one of the things that bothered me the most is IB investigators would hit people with the allegation of illegal search. If a complainant called up and said that, the cop said he smelled marijuana in my car, but he searched my whole car, searched my trunk, and they would hit the cop with illegal search. And I would send it back and say, why are you putting illegal search as an allegation? This is an allegation now that stays on this cop's record forever. Why are you putting this allegation on there when that is perfectly fine for them to do? It's perfectly fine for them to do. And I had to like really give a training session on that whole aspect. That at the time, if you smelled marijuana in the vehicle, it gave you probable cause that there was something else to be found in that vehicle, and you could search it. So it was things like that. It was also things where you would see investigators would get a call, and they'd get a call about ESU conducting a search warrant, right? And ESU would conduct a search warrant. So they have a Supreme Court search warrant. And the investigator would come up with an allegation of unlawful search. I'm like, how is that an unlawful search? I'm like, what this looks like to me is it looks like an improper investigation on you. So before I hit you with the allegation of improper investigation and I draw up a log on you, go back and remove that because they searched the residence based upon a lawful Supreme Court search. Now, if they want to say they damaged my property, they stole something, they beat me up, okay, those allegations should be addressed. But just starting off the bat, I think that, and I know a lot of people that work directly with Shamsul, for him, with him as supervisors in all ranks and sergeant and lieutenant and above him. And they said for the most part, he was kind of level-headed and smart, but he was a little too harsh on cops. And I do believe that stems more from not knowing the job than actually not liking the cops. But now listening to his platform, I don't think if you had other internal affairs investigators on there, I don't think that you would see people aligning with that platform. I don't. I just don't. I worked there. I was there 2 years, 8 months. I got a good run of everybody that was in there, all the boroughs, all the groups, and I'm sure it shows over. But I think when you look at internal affairs, you got to look at it as a command. There are guys that don't want to be there. There are guys that are great investigators. There are guys that are not so good investigators. There are people that don't like the police. But I wouldn't say it's any more or less than in your basic command.
Yeah, I have to push back against Eric too on this. I don't think it's more so. I don't think it's so much that these guys are anti-police. I think it's like you said, John. Well, I think it's a lot of what John said, but I also think it's the guys who go there are inadequate cops. Guys who are scared of the streets. I think it's guys who, like John said, are looking to, maybe get a gold shield that they wouldn't, or looking to get. They're looking. They're lazy, inadequate cops, and they're looking to get to a unit with less scrutiny, so that if they were on the street or a precinct, they'd get scrutinized by the CO for not doing the work, or for not pushing their guys to do the work, and they get scrutinized for a lot of things, for their inadequacies, and being in a unit like internal affairs, where half the job is scared of them, kind of, in my opinion, gets them less scrutiny. And I saw a comment in there. I saw a couple of them actually about the job. Let's see what it says. Boston Bob put up a couple great comments in there. He says, Marlon, that's the point. They don't want to be investigated. I guess he's alluding to that the job doesn't want proper investigators there because they don't want good investigations. But I don't know. I don't know. I I go back and forth on this a lot of times, and when I see guys like Rodney become chief of IB, and I kind of hope that they would clean house and put in investigators there and put in proper investigative techniques that would have prevented my case from even getting there. Because had there been actual investigators in there, or proper investigation, you'd have never had to GO15 me. My case was stupid, absolutely stupid. But I also saw another comment from Cobbs, who says he says that the sergeants, they're pretty much the investigators, and they're a lot of them are former detectives. Maybe that might be the case now, Cobbs. But the point is that this guy was there for 10 years, and this guy barely had any arrests himself. He wasn't a go-getter as a cop, and he damn sure wasn't an investigator or a detective. But here he is in internal affairs, and he's giving cops a hard time because he has no experience being a cop himself. He's never been in their shoes, so of course he's going to have unrealistic expectations of them. And I think one of the reasons why he's going more towards the left now is because he's never actually, he's going towards the left in terms of policing and the unrealistic expectations the left has of policing, because he was never a cop. Okay, because he's never been there. And when you've never been there, it's hard. A lot of times people have unrealistic expectations. A lot of times when you explain to a liberal or progressive how things actually work, and they actually think it through, a lot of times they realize that, wait a second, you're right. So I think that also contributes to his thinking now. So, Eric.
Now, I got to push back on both of you a little bit here. Now, don't get me wrong. John, you had a stint in internal affairs. I didn't. So you had a definitely better bird's eye view I had at certain aspects with internal affairs. But I had a lot of GO-15s. So if anyone who's not a cop who knows what a GO-15 is, that's an interrogation or an investigation. We sit with a tape recorded conversation, and part of an investigation. Obviously, a lot of use of force cases getting firearms off the street, and a lot of cases that were liaisoned and forwarded back and forth from the Civilian Complaint Review Board. Now, with that being said, in my opinion, based on what I saw, young cops, maybe with 2 and 3 years on the job, that go to internal affairs, I saw a lot of those cops having a bias and disdain towards policing themselves, because you have to ask yourself, with only 2 or 3 years on the job, 6 months at a police academy, you haven't really grinded on the streets yet. You have to figure that's something that you want to do. Most cops, brand new, you want to be on the street. You want to do police work. I find it hard to believe that you want to be in internal affairs so young on the job and not actually do the job and investigate perpetrators than investigate and just looking for cops. Because while it's important to find corrupt cops, let's be honest, it's a small percentage that are actually legit. A lot of it is crimes of opportunity, but cops that are going out there and robbing banks and stuff like that, it's far and few. But with that being said, I did see some cops that just were worn out and burnt out by the job. Excuse me. They spent 7, 8 years in anti-crime and sometimes 10 years and couldn't get to the squad, couldn't get to narco, couldn't get their shield. And finally, their last resort ultimately was to turn to internal affairs to find an investigative path to get to that shield, because they didn't have ties by nepotism or cronyism, and they couldn't get promoted. And so, yes, at the same time, there are plenty of cops that go there and they just do inadequate investigations because just inadequate cops. And a lot of times that's because of their mindset, I do believe. I mean, but again, I think these are all contributing factors. I don't think we're disagreeing, but I did see a lot of cops that when they're young on the job, and I have to question that. With 2 years on the job, 3 years on the job, why would you want to go to internal affairs? You haven't even grinded yet to investigate violent perpetrators on the street and handle face-to-face interactions, but rather investigate cops themselves, unless you have a disdain yourself. Now, when it comes to sergeants and lieutenants, I will agree. And I often tell John, I go, John, that's great. You were internal affairs. I think looking back at my career, I think that everyone that's in the supervisory rank should spend some time in internal affairs to get that perspective, to see how the job works behind the curtain, to really understand internal affairs and understand what it is to investigate fellow cops, and just to see that perspective of the job. I don't think cops should be there for a decade like Shamsul Haque. I think that's a problem. I think it should be a rotation basis. I think everyone should spend a short amount of time and be there and do investigations. But to be there a decade, that's a problem. That's a long time to be internal affairs. And really, you can become jaded and see the world in a much different view and see cops from a much different view. I mean, think about it. Here's someone that spent a decade, Shamsul Haque, as a supervisor in internal affairs, didn't do much police work himself. So all he sees is these use of force cases, right? Allegations of misconduct. That's all he sees. So what else is he going to think? And so I think that it should be rotation based. I think a decade is far too long to be in internal affairs. I don't agree with that. I don't think anyone should be in any position too long. You know, when I was in the Marine Corps, even drill instructors, they're on a rotation basis after several years. You don't stay in any particular spot for a long time. And I think we should take those ideals into policing. It's supposed to be a paramilitary organization, and we don't take those ideals. I think a decade is far too long, and I do think it can corrupt your mindset. And Shamsul Haque, I think his mind was already corrupted to have an anti-police rhetoric. I mean, clearly we see it now. You either do or you don't. And those are my thoughts on that. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I don't agree at all. I think you, I think you're way off, dude. I do. I think you're way off because, like, what you know, I don't care if it was a hard charger or not. I don't care if it was Terrence Monahan, Dermot Shea, Mike LePetri. These guys were all hard chargers. Like
they were.
Exactly. So what's the difference? And so he was in internal affairs. That he was. So what's the difference? You know what I mean? Like these are guys that believe in policing, and they're willing to, on a dime, turn around and go, we shouldn't be 250 in anybody. We shouldn't be locking anybody up for minor crimes. We should be doing targeted police work. We should be investigating only the major crimes. You know, saying things that are completely off the wall, you know? And like, yeah, you've had a lot of GO-15s in IAB, but you haven't had a lot of discipline from IAB. All your discipline came from CCRB.
No,
you know,
none. I've had none.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, you know what I mean? Like, for the most part, I mean, and spending time in internal affairs taught me two things. It taught me, one, the job really doesn't care about you. If you get caught up in a political aspect of you know, if there's politicians coming after you, they're not standing in the way of them. They're actually gonna come after you. You know, IAB is the political arm of City Hall. Like they're the enforcement arm of City Hall against the NYPD, and to protect City Hall for allegations against the upper echelon. But the other thing it taught me is that, like, how important it is to have good cops in there. A lot of things that, like, come out in the news, you know, there were a lot of cases where people said that they were brutally assaulted by the police. And you'll see in the news, will put up pictures of this guy's head out to here, and it looks like the arrest photo from the night before. And so one of the things that I would always make sure that everybody did was, I was like, I don't care what the news does. Take that out of there. I don't care what the news put out on their article. I don't care what the media said on Fox News or on Newsmax or on CNN. I don't care what that is. I want you have to pull up the arrest photo from last night. And almost all of the time, the news's photo was from a prior arrest where he was he was resisting arrest and all this stuff. And the actual photo from the night before, he was absolutely clean. The guy had no marks on his face, no nothing. And so, you know, it's really important that regardless why you're in internal affairs or not, I don't care. You're a lazy cop, you hate cops. It doesn't matter. There should be strict investigative guidelines right from the step of an allegation coming in. One, to not taint an investigation, because if in fact it is a crime. But I think when you're in internal affairs, you'll realize really quickly, if you think you're fighting corruption, what you're doing is 99.9% of the time is you're actually proving that there isn't a lot of corruption, because most of the allegations are frivolous. And I mean, I will say, like, Haque was in a group 54, the investigative group, and I don't really see them going after people too much, unless I never seen them, unless it was a real political hit job coming directly from the mayor. I thought that they did great investigations. I will say, you know, regardless how people liked him or didn't like him. So, but I think, like, just getting back to this, the thing here is this: like, how do you do a 180? How do you support Republican policies 2 years prior? How do you say you support law enforcement 2 years prior? And then you 180 and you have a completely different agenda, which is you have an agenda that is reminiscent of a politician that you and others were bashing 2 years ago, Zohran Mamdani. And now you're saying you want to support his mission. You want to further his mission. He comes out and gets endorsed by Bernie Sanders. And in my opinion, the factors here, there's either three things, excuse me. You're either doing this because you're a grifter and you just want to get in, you see an opportunity, you're a political opportunist. 2, you're just going along with him because he's a Muslim and you're a Muslim. Or 3, you really have nefarious intentions. I mean, I don't see like any other reasoning how you do a 180. I don't think you had a come to God moment and said, you know what? I think all the stuff I did, I think that we need to have cops, not cops, respond to EDPs, which he doesn't believe cops should be first responders to emotionally disturbed people. I think he's also pushing Daniel's law. If any of you are familiar with Daniel's law in New York State, and this is what he wants to push. He wants to help further Mamdani's agenda. And Daniel's law is removing a law enforcement response from dealing with emotionally disturbed people. Now, you can't tell me that any internal affairs investigator, you can't tell me that former NYPD Chief of Department Rodney Harrison, if you want to compare them, they're opposite ends of the spectrum. You know what I mean? Here's a guy, Shamsul Haque, spent his whole entire career in internal affairs. Here's Rodney Harrison, street cop, was in the shooting, was an undercover. I mean, did anti-crime, did all these things. You want to say that, and yet they both align. They both align perfectly on that they think that this is a good idea, and this could potentially be a good idea to be studied, to quote Rodney Harrison, which you're full of shit, Rodney. I'll say it one more time. Because you can't tell me that you could sit down and have an actual conversation about that and how that will work and how that's going to be good, because Zohran Mamdani till today still cannot answer my questions about how that's going to work. Until today, New York City taxpayers spent $220 million so far to see how it's going to work, and so that they could come out with how it's going to work. But Shamsul now all of a sudden thinks it's a good idea. Rodney Harrison thought it was a good idea. And I don't think they're alone. I think public safety's become a grift. And I think you see a lot of guys. I see a lot of guys pushing it. You know, who was the other guy? Who's the other guy with the Rising Star? Who's that guy? Tony Raganella, saying that he didn't think SRG was a good idea and he wants to redo that. I think I could easily, I'm sure if Zohran called him up, he would come out and say the same shit. You know, and so I think I honestly see political opportunists, and that's what I think. Public safety's become a grift, and yeah, I get people like, oh, he was in IAB his whole career. I get it, but I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters, because there's plenty of guys out there that were great cops that will sell their soul out to get in with the in crowd.
Well, let me just say this, Marlon, before you go, because I want to fire back at this one. I think that you said I was way off, but I think you're not seeing my perspective, what I'm saying. And this is what I'm saying. I'm not saying Shamsul Haque was an amazing cop and that you can't be a former street cop, turn politics over policing, right? Because what I'm saying is Shamsul Haque, I wasn't surprised by his career, because most people in internal affairs, especially cops that move their way up through the ranks and stay in internal affairs, in my opinion, have a bias and disdain for policing, and that's why they stay there so long, especially starting out as young cops.
Yeah,
now,
I don't agree.
That's my opinion. That's my opinion. That was.
You're saying we agree and we don't. That's what I'm saying to you.
Well, you don't let me finish here. What my next part? My next part is this: is that yes, Rodney Harrison and these other cops we often talk about as cops were great cops. I said the same thing on the last episode. Dermot Shea, I was told he was a cop's cop. Same thing with Jimmy O'Neill. But at some point, when they get promoted in those executive ranks, they pass a threshold and they put politics over policing, and they are no longer those cops they were once. They once were. That's my opinion. They are no longer those cops they once were, and they are Shamsul, and Shamsul is them at that position. Were they cops at one time? Yes, but they passed that threshold. Was Shamsul Haque ever a cop? In my opinion, no. But so can you be a cop and you actually transition? You put politics over policing? Yes, we've seen it. I see what Bruce Separano. I've seen the same thing. I see, someone I knew my whole career, who I consider a friend. He put politics over policing also. And somewhere they crossed that threshold. That's what I'm saying. That's the part I think that we agree. Now, what I'm saying is that my first perspective that I said today is that I didn't believe Shamsul Haque was a street cop. I would find it hard to believe. And I said a street cop. Was Rodney Harris a street cop? Yes, but he's no longer that cop. He passed that threshold once he became a chief, once he became that executive that was willing to put politics as policing. So may he once be a cop. He was, but he's no longer that cop. That's my perspective on it. I think that's where we agree and disagree. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think I don't think we agree at all. I don't think people
And
that
that's
are
okay. That's
I don't think people that are in internal affairs, the overwhelming majority of people in internal affairs do not have a bias and disdain for cops. And I'll say that throughout the entire department.
I don't agree, because I dealt with some of those investigators as cops, and clearly their mindset towards policing was just completely anti-police. A lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them, they never wanted to be cops. Think about it, John. With 2 years on the job, you want to be in internal affairs. You don't want to be on the street in narcotics or some type of
what's the difference? What's the difference between an IAB cop and a community affairs cop? What's the difference between an IAB cop and a crime stat cop? What's the difference?
No, I agree.
IAB
I would put them in the same umbrella.
All these other fucking details. Like, really, what's the difference? There's no difference.
No,
they don't want to do police work.
I agree.
The majority of cops today don't want to do the job. The majority of bosses today would never go back and do the job. You know, I'm telling you, I worked internal affairs 2 years, 8 months. I was in administration. I seen every single group, all the boroughs, all the different specialty units. I'm telling you, the majority of it was like the makeup of a precinct, dude. It was like the majority of guys, and there's a lot of good guys, and they just get caught up in the trap. Look, when I was there, I want my 2 years in. I put my transfer in right at the 2 year mark. I was like, thank you. They had already put me in for the money a year prior to that, before my 2 year commitment was already up. And literally, the commissioner was like, "Look, if you stay, you're gonna get the money. Like, you just have to pull it right now. You just have to say you don't want to do this." And I was like, I don't want the money. And a lot of people fall into that trap. Look, it's a good life. You get older in life, you get married. I mean, I could have stayed there. Like, everyone knows. Like, I have a daughter with disabilities. Like, it's hard work to be a cop for all those times. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard to be able to transition and do all these tours when, now I'm in a position in internal affairs where I'm getting overtime. I do day tours. I have weekends off. I could get the money. I'm gonna get the money, and that's the trap that they get a lot of good people into, man. And they do. I'm not saying Shamsul deserves to get the money. Don't get me wrong. They're totally different. You have 38 collars. I'm not putting Shamsul on that pedestal. His ass should have went out into the street and been a sergeant and a lieutenant. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm saying I agree that people shouldn't stay in there because it gets stale. But when you're in there, you will see 99.9% of everything that comes in is absolute lies. It's absolute lies. Like, it's total lies, and you're disproving the lies consistently. So it would kind of be hard to have that. I'm telling you, it would kind of be hard to have that bias and disdain for police, because you could have some dumb, ignorant points of view. But I hear chiefs have dumb, ignorant points of view. I've been listening to.
I'll agree on that one.
I've been listening to what's his name, Faizan. Like he's been putting out all these videos. I'm like, this guy has such a biased, narrowed point of view and view of the world, and so that could be anybody. I just don't, So I'm not saying that Shamsul is a great cop. I'm just saying it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if he was a great cop or if he doesn't. We're seeing cops allow themselves to be used. Shamsul was just the first one that wanted to do it when it came time for Zohran. In my opinion, he's a political opportunist. It appears he's still running his time with the NYPD. I'm not sure. And I wouldn't be shocked if this bid for Assembly District 30 doesn't work out, that you see him once again as a lieutenant in the NYPD, potentially in Mamdani's detail, and so again, I don't think it matters. Street cop, IB cop, community affairs cop. If you're gonna say you believe these things, you're a liar. I don't think that he thinks that these EDP situations will work out, especially the fact that he was in the use of force group when the overwhelming majority of those cases that he's investigated are frivolous, and they know it.
There's a lot of good points brought up there. Is there a chance that we can? I'm I'm starting to see where Eric is coming from. I think is there a chance though that we could be misinterpreting arrogance and self-importance for hatred of cops? You know, these guys, if they've been in internal affairs so long that it's kind of they get away from the scrutiny of being in a precinct, of being in the lower ranks, and they get to a unit again where the much of the job is scared of, and they don't have much of the scrutiny of the other job. In my opinion, they have scrutiny from internal affairs, but you know, we've talked about in the past about that detective in IB, Travis, what's his name? The guy who investigated your case?
Travis Rutherford, man.
Yeah, Rutherford.
My
Yeah,
hero.
the sergeant, right?
No, the
And we-
idiot. But I don't think Travis has a bias in the stand for policing. I think Travis is just an idiot who's going to be a sergeant detective squad, aka slight Down syndrome. You know, like he's like I just think I don't think he has a bias in the stand for policing. I know people that know him. I just think he's an idiot. I mean, we could play the video. We could play the tape again.
That's a different conversation. I didn't say every single person has a bias in the state. I found a lot of people with 2 and 3 years on the job that get to that point to decide to go internal affairs. There are plenty of people internal affairs just inadequate. Travis Rutherford's exactly that. He's not someone to me that could be an investigator in the detective squad. Clearly, he found his seat in internal affairs, but I mean, there are totally different facets. What I'm just talking about a pool of cops that are there for bias in the state. Not all of them. But I do believe, and I'll stand by that, there are a pool of cops that get into internal affairs with 2 and 3 years on the job, and they just have a bias and staying for police day one. And they think they're going to change the world and they're going to get bad cops. I don't think it's every one of them, but I do think there is a good handful.
Yeah, my point is in Travis is that is basically about the scrutiny they get, because if you're in a regular squad or wherever that you have to drop a 5, which is for you civilians watching it, a 5 is basically like think of it as a report, that detectives do, or like a what's the word? Yeah, just think of it as a report, okay?
To report.
If you're in any other unit in the NYPD and you're doing a 5, and you're telling me that you're going to refer the case over to 911 communications from an outside law enforcement agency, you're gonna be, they're gonna be like, "What the hell are you talking about? Like, you retard? Well, go back and close out the case properly." So the fact that happens over there, to me, tells me that you're getting less scrutiny than you would in like a precinct or the other units outside of internal affairs.
Yeah,
So
but that was totally different. We had the mayor of New York City and the police commissioner coming after us. That would have never happened. If I when I read through the case, I was like, this is insane. Like everybody would have been suspended that touched this case. Like everybody would have been suspended, jammed up, and thrown out of internal affairs that touched this case. That was an intentional non-investigative thing to not find anyone guilty. The chief of internal affairs, Miguel Iglesias, was conducting informal PGs and asking one question. "Oh, did you send these guys? No? Oh, okay, thanks." that doesn't happen, never. Like you
in the hallway.
You can't look at our case. You cannot look at our case. You have to look at the basic Joe Schmo cop gets a use of force case. Is the basic cop that has a use of force case getting jammed up from NYPD internal affairs? And the answer is no. Are they getting jammed up from CRB? And the answer is yes.
Well, yeah, but I also have to bring up my case. Now, I told you guys before, this was when I was a rookie. I went to get an apartment. The guy needed like some proof that I was working. I only had my job ID. So I showed it to him. He went in the room and photocopied it, unbeknownst to me. Now, again, I'm an idiot rookie, so I'm not thinking that this guy is going to be photocopying my ID. Years later, I found out that he was giving his son, his son was throwing a photocopy of my ID in his windshield to skirt tickets, right? And his car was finally towed. And I was brought into IB about it, and I was like, if a proper investigation had been done, that you could have figured out that this guy was lying all along. But no, but you know, it was half-assed, and you brought me in, and you're pushing me to accept the charge. You know, accept whatever was going to come down from that. You know, so it's bullshit. And my point is that if you're in a, you know, if you're in a squad or you're in a unit that had to drop a 5, like you can't tell me that would have happened. I sincerely doubt that would have happened. Somebody might have asked you, did you question this guy properly? What questions did you ask him? You know, and the fact that it happened again in internal affairs tells me that, you know, it's just not. I'm sorry, John, but I don't think the level of scrutiny is on the same level as
it's way higher, the level of scrutiny in internal affairs, because you drop a 5, who's signing off on it?
Mm-hmm.
Who's signing off on it? Who's signing off on your 5? You do a report. Who's signing off on your 5?
Yeah, your supervisor,
a sergeant or a lieutenant.
Yeah.
Where does it go after that?
Well, in you know, it goes to the captain or the unit commander to close it off.
Yeah. So for every internal affairs 5 that goes out, and every case, it's not called a 5. They call it a worksheet, but it's the same exact system. They use it's a mirrored system. You guys use ECMS. They use ISIS or whatever the hell they call it. ICE-TM, whatever the hell the name of it is. And so your 5 just gets signed by your immediate supervisor. The worksheets that they do, it gets signed by a sergeant, then by a lieutenant, then by their CO. Then it goes and everyone is looking at that all the way through, where if you look at the cases, the majority of cases that you have, it's highly unlikely, unless it's a media case, that anyone above that rank is ever going to see that worksheet, what you did. Whereas in internal affairs, everyone and their mother is going to see that worksheet, like all the way up to the big chiefs, all the way up to the top. You know, so I think the problem is, again, when it's a political hit job, they just bypass all of what happened. When you cannot look at what happened with me and Eric. That was a total hit job, shit show. It should have never happened, would have never happened. Everybody in Group 1 that you all listening to this now, you all fucking know it, and you're a bunch of cowards, and that's a totally different conversation. But I will say, if you show me where IAB is jamming up cops, show it to me. You know what I mean? Show really jamming up good cops. What they're doing is investigating allegations. They're not traditionally going out there and going after them unless it's a hit job. Then they're sending their Group 52 to do bullshit stunts in front of you to try to jam you up. Once you get in the political crosshairs of the mayor or the police commissioner, then they'll come after you and they'll be used as the enforcement arm. Or if you guys start a podcast in retirement, then they'll be used to come after you. But other than that, basic allegation comes in. They're not jamming cops up like that. They're just not, you know. And so I don't think any of what Shamsul's like saying here has anything to do with his time in internal affairs. Listen to what he says here. Haque has more nuanced views on criminal justice than many Mamdani's leftist supporters. He's broadly supportive of the police, right? He's broadly supportive. I support the cops, but I'm opposed to mass incarceration. Shamsul, explain to me where the NYPD is just walking out there and handcuffing people in mass. Explain it to me. Show me. Show me an example of mass incarceration in the NYPD where cops go out there, lock people up, and then the DAs prosecute them and judges just throw mass people in jail. It doesn't happen. Mass incarceration is a made-up term. And he's in favor of limited criminal justice reforms. We have to look at the whole criminal justice system in a way that would be beneficial for New York. I cannot fathom how we are the richest nation and the strongest nation, and yet we have so many people incarcerated. So it's the prison's fault. It's not the individual's fault. I mean, the dude's lost, bro. Like this is not of any cop. I don't care what you're in there. This is a total grift. He's trying to get on the gravy train. This is bullshit statement. These are not pointed words. These are not issues that he would be willing to debate. Right, Shamsul? And that's why you didn't respond, right? That's why. Because you can't debate them. Because in my opinion, you're full of shit. You want to jump on the gravy train. You see an opportunity here, and you're a political opportunist like the overwhelming majority of those in the upper echelons of the 1PP.
You know what, John? This is my perspective. This is my opinion, and you have experience in internal affairs. And this is kind of why sometimes I say I wish I had a stint in internal affairs also to see it from that lens. But from the lens I see it, I think you kind of proved our point of the position internal affairs is in. I think, you're saying that it goes through layers. The worksheets go through all and I know that the worksheets in internal affairs go through that ladder, but that the worksheets that go through this ladder are for scrutiny. But based on our case, what it says to me is the reason why it goes through that ladder is to ensure they can protect the upper echelon, to make sure that these cases are vetted, to make sure that when there's allegations, it doesn't include the upper echelon. And that the reason why it goes through all these layers, as high up as you're saying it does, is to protect the upper echelon, not necessarily to scrutinize and make sure it gets properly investigated, but to make sure they can protect the upper echelon. And I think that's my perception. And it proved it with our case. It proved it, right? Because internal affairs to misconduct and corruption, how could we be such targets, and how could we have such a terrible investigation, intentionally investigation, and actually get signed off? Because they signed off on those worksheets for our case. So what it says to me is the reason, this is my opinion, and I think maybe you agree, maybe you don't, John, but it kind of agrees with our case. But the reason why it goes through these layers is to be the henchman for the upper echelon. That's what it appears to me. And because why else? Is it really necessary for a captain above to sign off on a minuscule case, on a use of force case that's not going anywhere? It doesn't even make sense. So in my opinion, it's exactly that. And that's exactly what they did with our case, John. They did a floppy invest.
Our case is totally, you can never look at our case as any other case.
Our case is, but
you can never look at our case as any other case. If they did an analysis of the steps they followed in our case versus any other case, people would get arrested and go to jail.
100%.
It doesn't. The chief of internal affairs never investigates a case. And the reason that captains are in there is this. Look what Joe Roscoe says. He says, "Hold up, John. Haque and his sergeant let the DA indict me on false allegations." Let the DA indict you? When has a member of the NYPD ever let a DA do anything? DA acts completely independently from the NYPD, and that's the reason it goes up to an NYPD captain and beyond. It even goes up to an inspector. Sometimes a chief, and a lot of times even the chief of internal affairs, especially in this issue, Joe. A cop getting suspended for a use of force case or even modified is a huge deal, and it goes way above even the chief of internal affairs. That is a decision that's being made with the entire upper echelon of the job between the chief of internal affairs and the police commissioner. Everything, every modification, every suspension on a use of force is a major, major incident. And now, so it is what it is. Like on every single case, except for myself and Eric Dim's case, you have to run those allegations by a district attorney prior to closing that case in a use of force case. Now, you can't help what the district attorney is going to do. Now, obviously, if investigated properly after the person admitted that he was trying to cause annoyance and alarm to myself and Eric by threatening the lives of our children, if you ran that to a DA, well, he knowingly did that, then they would have sought to prosecute him, right? And so just because the DA came after you doesn't mean that the job actually came after you. You really have to look at it in a lot of ways. If you look at what happened with Pantaleo, it was the exact opposite, right? They ran it by the DA. The DA didn't prosecute, but yet the NYPD still fired him. If you look at Hugh Barry, Hugh Barry actually went, I believe. So that's a bad example. But if you look at the Pantaleo case, it's a different example. So that's why, it wasn't. What I'm saying is, Haque isn't suspending anybody. That's all I'm saying. Haque isn't modifying anybody. Haque isn't getting anybody on DA. Like no detective, no sergeant, no lieutenant. Maybe a captain could slip one through, but I don't think so. You know what I mean? You got to run the modifications really coming way above that. And for use of force and any internal affairs investigations, that's going to be the decision of the chief of IB.
Yeah. Yeah. Before we go on, I just want to point out that, Hawk has had I think he's been political for a while. And I think he's been, he's self-interested, opportunist, political opportunist. And keep in mind, this is his community organization, Rise Up for New York City. And let's also remember that he was the co-founder of the Bengali American Police Association. So I think he's been political for a while, and I think this is just the next level. I think maybe he's just realized that you're not going to win as a conservative, so why should I be principled? Maybe I should, I got to drink the Kool-Aid if I want to get in office. So.
Yeah, I mean, and then look at its stance here on the this will sound familiar to you. When it comes to the NYPD's recent shooting of Jabez Chakrabarti, a 22-year-old Bangladeshi American man who approached officers with a knife while suffering a mental health crisis, he believes officers were technically justified under the NYPD's current use of force policy. But he also says that the policy should be revised. So if someone charges you with a knife, he wants to revise it. How do you want to revise it, Shamsul? Could you tell us? Could you tell us? Let's pull the body cam, Shamsul. You come on here. You tell us why they were technically justified and how you would like that technicality to be reversed and changed. He says the policy should be revised, and then he echoed Mamdani's call for Queens DA, attorney Melinda Katz, to drop the charges against Chakrabarti, which Melinda Katz did not. Haque has similarly nuanced views when it comes to the NYPD's relationship with federal immigration authorities. If someone commits a crime, there must be consequences. But if someone is simply undocumented and working hard, raising a family, and contributing to the community, they should not be targeted, protected, he said. New York City is built by immigrants. Our policies must reflect safety and humanity together. So 100% political opportunity. I don't believe that Shamsul will ever debate any single one of these points. But doesn't matter because Bernie Sanders came out and endorsed him, and he's going to win, overwhelmingly win out the left in Queens.
I don't compare Shamsul Haque to Rodney Harrison, to Dermot Shea, to Jimmy O'Neill. To me, those are two different paths. They have the same view right now. They're political, they're political opportunists, but they took different paths because, as I said earlier, Dermot Shea, Jimmy O'Neill, Rodney Harrison, Allison Esposito, they were all cops. They all had illustrious careers. But at some point, when they crossed that threshold in the executive ranks, they put politics over policing in order to climb that ladder. I don't agree with it. I think it's a terrible way to live. I think they're living a lie. But to me, Shamsul Haque is someone that was never even a cop. And he's a political opportunist, just took a different path. But his case, I don't even think he understands policing. For an entire decade, he was internal affairs. He doesn't understand policing at all. So the difference I say with him, he might actually believe what his stance. Rodney Harrison, Dermot Shea, Jimmy O'Neill, I don't believe they actually believe their points at this point. I believe that they're living a lie because they were cops at one time and they know they're intelligent, just as Michael LaPetri. They're intelligent. They know what's necessary for policing, but yet they're complicit in this progressive movement because they're silent and they don't go against it because of the political opportunity. I think when it comes to Shamsul Haque, I believe in his position, I could be wrong, that he just doesn't understand policing because he's never done it. And I believe that when it comes to him, I think he believes in these actual aggressive movements towards cops. I believe he thinks the cops are too brutal. Yes, he supports the police, but then at the same time, he backhands them with these policies. So how do you support the police? So it just doesn't make any sense. I believe that he doesn't understand policing at all. Obviously, I'm saying that from a point of view, perspective, and opinion. I don't know him personally, but based on my views. But spending an entire decade in internal affairs speaks volumes to me. He's never had to wear a body camera. He's never had to hand out a business card. He's never been a modernized police officer. He hasn't even done much time as a police officer himself. So he doesn't know what it is to use force himself to be in a force case. He doesn't even know what it is to be scrutinized by body cameras. Never been in that position. So it's very telling to me that maybe he does believe in these policies. So the outcome is ultimately the same. The outcome is that we have the upper echelon of the police department, many active and retired, pushing these woke progressive policies. And then we have people like Shamsul Haque pushing these policies as well. The outcome comes the same. Politics over policing. It's just a matter of, we're talking about, were they cops or not? Sure. They were cops at one time, Rodney Harrison, Dermot Shea, Jimmy O'Neill, but they're no longer cops, in my opinion. And Shamsul Haque, he was never a cop.
So, I mean, it's a lot there, but I mean, ultimately, when you look at Shamsul 2 years ago, he was singing a different tune, dude. He was singing a different tune. So he was singing a different tune. Like, that's the thing. And so here's Joe Roscoe again. He says, John, they're jamming up cops by not properly investigating. Look, I agree with you. I said there should be stronger investigators. I didn't say Internal Affairs is doing a great job. I didn't say that they have the best people there. But, you know, I didn't say that at all. And you know, to be fair, I could say the same thing about every fucking unit in the NYPD at this point. You know, on every aspect. I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh yeah, this one's running perfectly fine. Like, no, there's a lot of bullshit in every unit. Probably more in IAB than in most. Probably less in IAB than there was on patrol, though. You know, and so yeah, cops get jammed up by bad investigators. 100%. 100%. Not investigating, not understanding the key aspects of an investigation. Absolutely, you could get jammed up like that. Because of that. 100%, I agree with you. But overall, today, what I'm saying is the majority of cops are not being jammed up by Internal Affairs Bureau. They're just not. They're being jammed up by CCRB, and they're being jammed up by the way that they're keeping track of their records and keeping all of these frivolous complaints public record. So not only does it affect you during your career, it affects you after your career. It affects you in death in your name. So, you know, I totally agree that, you know, like, look, 10 years in the Internal Affairs, and it seems like it was more to me. It seems like it was like 14 years. Way too long for you to be there. I don't think anybody should be there that long in any rank. You know, maybe you go back in different ranks, fine, whatever. But, you know, I see him as a complete political opportunist. There are people that see him as that he just wants to further Mamdani's agenda, and he's only aligning with him because they're the same religion and the same race. You know, they come and that's a possibility too. Me, I just think that he always wanted to get into politics. He was pushing a completely different narrative, and he realized, hey, look, if I could I could jump on the gravy train, and this is the path of least resistance to that. So all I got to say is these things, you know? And so I just think that, you know,
good point.
This is the perfect politician. This is who they are. This is who they are. They'll change on a dime. Here's his public safety platform. Strong communities are built on trust. This is directly from Shamsul's website. So this isn't anything that, you know, this isn't a newspaper article. Strong communities are built on trust, stability, and support. Public safety means making sure you have what they need, from housing to mental health care, while ensuring accountability and fairness. Passing Daniel Law, so crises are handled by trained professionals. So what he's saying is that cops aren't trained professionals and shouldn't be responding to mental health crises. That's what he just said that. So absolutely ridiculous. Again, Shamsul, I know you won't come on here. I'll give you credit if you do, but I don't think you're gonna, because I don't think that you could properly explain to me what you mean there. I'll support community-based and safety prevention programs. Which programs specifically, Shamsul? I want to know, because I hear a lot about these evidence-based programs. Nobody could tell me them. Nobody could show me the metrics of why they work. So just more mumbo jumbo. He wants to expand access to mental health services, so more crumbs for his friends. He wants to ensure accountability across public systems. That's great. Where'd you get that one from? ChatGPT? What? How does that look? What kind of accountability are you putting in there? He wants to support fair and timely parole focused on rehabilitation. Who's against parole, Shamsul? Who's against rehabilitation? Nobody. We're against letting people out, violent people out that don't belong on New York City streets. And he wants to advocate for the implementation of the HALT Act and totally toward the abolition of solitary confinement. I mean, here's someone that never worked in the prisons, that doesn't understand solitary confinement. Solitary confinement as it is almost non-existent, and that's why violence in jails has been up significantly. Not saying that people should sit there and rot, but there needs to be cool out periods and times. Is our corrections facilities and departments doing a great job? No, I don't think they do. I totally think they need to overhaul. But putting people like Eric Adams, Zohran Mamdani in charge of these, and now even Shamsul Haque in charge of these facilities is the issue. That is the major issue. Accountability starts at the top, and there is none.
You know, I'm curious, Sean. What policies does he support on bail reform, if any? I'm sure there are some. I'm curious. I looked at the policy also. I didn't see anything about bail reform. So I'm curious what policies he supports on bail reform. That's why Shamsul Haque, it's important. You should come on here so we could ask you questions like that, because it doesn't say in your policies. I'm curious. What policies does he support on bail reform, if any?
Yeah, he supports whatever ask Mamdani. What do you got? We don't got to ask. We don't got to ask Shamsul. Whatever Mamdani said, that's what Shamsul believes.
It's true. It's true. Now,
is it interesting though? In his, he claims to support cops. Think about that, right? I looked at his policy also, John Marlon. I looked at his policies, and you have nothing to say about bail reform. Nothing to say. I mean, you have Zohran Mamdani, who's the mayor, who mirrors Andrew Cuomo, who mirrors Eric Adams. You have nothing to say about bail reform. You care about cops. You talk about incarceration. You talk about streets, but nothing about bail reform. To me, that's very telling.
Yeah, he has very little to say about quality of life too, and there's probably a reason for that, because the area he's running for is the Assembly District 30 in Queens, which includes parts of Woodside, Elmhurst, Jackson Heights, Maspeth, East Elmhurst, and Corona. And one of the problems they have there is quality of life, and that includes also prostitution. And I found it interesting that there's nothing on his site about quality of life or prostitution, considering the Democrat socialists, which he's aligning with, if not overtly saying it, he is 100% aligning himself with them, with his support from Bernie Sanders and his support of Mamdani. And the Democrat socialists want to legalize prostitution. Okay. So I find it curious that there's nothing on his site about quality of life concerns, right? Also, keep in mind that these areas, like let's look at Jackson Heights. Mamdani won Jackson Heights 60% of the vote over there. He secured, in terms of Woodside, he had 55 to 57% of the votes. Corona, he had 54. Elmhurst, 52. East Elmhurst, it gets a little more, around 50-50. But I think, it's clearly obvious that his pivot to his Mamdani is I think he's just, he just figured, hey, I'm not going to win being principled, so screw it. I'm going to support Mamdani because Mamdani won last election. But there's something else that when I see this, that gets me worried, because I think America is kind of devolving, certainly New York. All right, let's forget about America for now. But New York seem to me is devolving into like third world tribalist voting. Okay. And that, that really bothers me. The fact I was looking at the black voters that voted for Eric Adams, right? So in 2021, Eric Adams had an estimated 85 to 90% of the black vote citywide, which is curious because Eric Adams was a cop, Eric Adams was a cop. And man, I when I see things like that, I have to wonder how many of these voters just voted for Eric Adams because he was black. And in this case, I have to wonder, is this another case of, let me support Mamdani because he's another brown guy, and it's that tribalist voting that just makes me so uncomfortable, and it's like some third world crap, where people are voting for the guy who's from their tribe and who's going to reward their tribe, and you know and not voting for any actual principal policies that's going to meaningfully improve their lives. And this is why a lot of third world countries are like still shitholes, decades after they've become democratic, or they've gone from being a colonial you know territory to actually being an independent country. And again, that really makes me uncomfortable. Okay, Boston Bob, I'm sounding a little racist. Boston Bob, my birth country is, years ago I would say it was a third world country, maybe in the 80s. It's not a third world country now. I'd say it's a second world country. But I have the right to call that shit out, because I don't want the country that my parents went to so I could have an opportunity. I don't want that country becoming a second world or third world country. Okay.
You know what's funny, Marlon, right? This world has become so woke when it comes to identity politics and diplomatic. So I'm a history major, but I love geography too. I love to travel. And if you research different countries, they're starting to remove the term third world, second world, first world. There was a time where you could look up a country and you could say, oh, that's first world. It would say second world, third world. And a lot of times, if you look at narratives about countries, if you just look it up on the internet, they'll remove that wording because people are afraid to say it now. And they'll just say undeveloped nation who's trying to grow economics instead of saying third world, the second world, the first world. It's funny, but that's a lot of identity politics. And what I see also from people like Zohran Mamdani and Shamsul Haque, I just totally destroyed his name. I can't even say it right. But when they're pushing these policies, they feed off the desperation of poor communities, right? Because all those communities that you put up, those are poor communities in Queens that are really suffering from quality of life. And there's people living there, and they're in desperation. I mean, you see in countries like Brazil. In countries like Brazil, the people voted for a criminal. A criminal is basically their president because he offered them some food. He gave people food. And so it's very short term. And I believe the same thing with people like Zohran Mamdani and Shamsul Haque. They feed off desperation. So like they offer people these free stuff that's never coming to fruition. In the end, it's actually going to cost people more money. But people are in desperation from some of those poor communities. So they hear free and things like that, and they feed off of it. And that's how these guys get their votes. Honestly, they're evil. So it's absolutely disgusting to feed off people's desperations. But in reality, that's what they do. That's how they get these votes. Because if you really cared about quality of life, you'd be in Jackson Heights walking down the strip right now and really trying to crack down. I mean, there's some real human trafficking going on there right now. They talk about their policies behind prostitution, but they really don't care about these girls that are getting trafficked right now, because with human trafficking comes all these gangs that are there, and they're pushing money coming from all these South American countries, and it's all, gangs like Tren de Aragua and other gangs like that also. So that's the reality. And so they're feeding off people's desperations while these communities are just falling apart. And people, it's not just mere isolation of prostitution. It goes far beyond that. Human trafficking, people that are just held against their will, and they feed off that desperation. So it's sad. It's terrible.
Yeah, HFL says it here. Race, color, creed. That's how people vote. And, that is the New York story, dude. Like, what's occurring now isn't any different than what's been occurring since New York's founding. I mean, it was, first it was the Irish, then it was the Italians, then it was, the Protestant versus the Catholics. Like, it's consistently, this is what's being done, like warring parties. It's almost, and 100%. I think a lot of people that voted for Zohran Mamdani do not support democratic socialism. I think they supported him based upon his religion or his ethnic background. I do. And I think that's why you saw Eric Adams, who was a cop, get elected at the height of the anti-police movement simply because he was black. That was it, and I don't think that's a racist statement at all. And I think if you go back in history, A lot of that has been, right? You go to Italian neighborhoods. If you don't put up an Italian, if you didn't put up in, like when the Italians came in and started taking over neighborhoods in New York, if you didn't put out an Italian candidate up, he wasn't winning. He or she wasn't winning. And same in Irish neighborhoods, and the same in all in Jewish neighborhoods. Like you're not going to win. You're not going to win. So what are you doing? And now as the ethnicities change and there's different culture comes in, then you see different candidates being put up. Like you look at Shahana Hanif's district, right, in Brooklyn. That was a predominantly Jewish, Italian, Irish, Polish, working class neighborhood, and it changed over to a large Muslim population, Bangladeshi, a lot of other groups out there. And then Shahana Hanif was able to get into a district where you have a lot of Hasidic Jews, where you have a lot of ethnic Jews, where you have all these other different breeds, but she was able to win based upon her religion and her skin color, and so that's what's happening. That's why they keep the voting block uninformed, so I don't think anything that's occurring hasn't always been occurring. I just think, we're just more in tuned with it now. And so Shamsul Haque understands that his community is rising, and by his community, I mean his community with his religion and with his race. They're a rising population, and he wants to get on the gravy train. And in order to get on that gravy train, he's going to go with the controlling party, which is the form of least resistance, and that is the Democratic Socialists of America. I think he went from a no-name overnight to now he potentially, I believe, is the front runner in that race. Unfortunately, unless we're able to get Brandon Castro's message out there, unless he has a strong message, he's got a big problem on his hands to win that district. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen with that. Yeah, I think, like I said, I think he's just another political opportunist. When you deep dive further into his agenda, it's affordability. Same thing that we had right with Zohran Mamdani. Queens is one of the most diverse places in the world. Keeping it affordable is how we protect families, cultures, and small businesses. That's what makes the district is what it is. He wants to pass a rent freeze for rent stabilized tenants statewide. So now it's not just citywide. He wants to pass the RECT Act to declare housing emergencies statewide. He wants to invest in truly affordable housing by redefining income requirements by local averages. Wow. Support community and land trust. Push for property tax relief for homeowners. Strengthen tenant protections and enforce housing laws so people can stay and grow and continue building communities here. This is exactly Mamdani's agenda. And the reason that he left out quality of life is because, in fact, he has no plan for your quality of life. Your quality of life will continue to decline under these policies. And it's funny, though, that they put affordable on there, because as these policies continue to grow, New York City will become even more unaffordable. And these policies are actually making that. And I think that's the second half of the show, is where we're going to talk about how unaffordable it's going to become. So, yeah, I mean, that's me in a nutshell with Shamsul Haque. I believe personally he's a political opportunist. I don't know who he is. I don't know if he's anti-cop. I don't know if he's pro-cop. I just know that he's willing to be used as a mouthpiece to get into office, and that is the exact person you do not want in office. But unfortunately, that is the exact person that seems to be winning out every single time in New York City.
Yeah, and just to go back on what we said, like I guess he figures it doesn't matter because you're gonna vote for him. The people in those areas are gonna vote for him because he's a brown guy anyway. So what does it matter if they change his position? They're not voting for principle. They're voting for him because he looks just like him. So what does it matter? And about his let's go to his website again. Those things John just pointed out, like the push for rent stabilization, or push strengthen tenant protections against. So that means basically what he's saying is it's going to be harder for landlords to kick out non-paying tenants, right? But look at all the other measures that he wants to pass. I want to know how exactly they're going to be able to afford any of this stuff. Okay, The state's budget was late. The city, their budget, Mamdani's budget, was plugged by $6 billion from the state. And keep in mind that next year, we have another $7 to $10 billion hole. Now, the 7 was stated by Eric Adams himself. Okay, when all the way last year, right? But chances are it's going to balloon to 10 billion when you factor in inflation and inflationary pressures on the economy like energy, right? So the point is, there's a hole in the budget next year that's going to need filling, right? So where's that money coming from, right? And if the state itself they are going to have to tighten up their budget, where are you getting the money for all of these programs from? So,
I just want to say this. I think it's really interesting to me, the lane that Shamsul Haque has taken, right? That lane is kind of like he's found the balance, which it's terrible, but to appease these communities, because what he's saying is, hey, I was former law. Well, he's still law enforcement, right? Because he's not retired yet, but he's saying, hey, I'm law enforcement. I'm not anti-police. I support the police, but at the same time, I support Mamdani's policies and his agenda. So I support the police, but I believe the police should be balanced in this way with this community apparatus. So what he's done is he's actually found, I believe, in my opinion, he's found a way to appease to these low-income communities. Says, hey, I'm brown. I look like you. I support these policies just as Zohran Mamdani, but at the same time, I wore the hat of a police officer so I could support you. And I'm not anti-police, but I want the police to police in a certain manner. So he's find that balance. It's definitely an interesting lane that he's taken. And so to me, there's no way he was a cop. There's no way you could believe in these policies. And yes, and that's the point with the upper echelon. There's no way that they could believe in those policies because they were cops. So ultimately, they end up all in the same lane. And that lane is living a lie and putting out policies that they know do not work, but because it's fancy, it's sexy, and it's the policies they get to promote them, they keep them in the political sphere. So we see people on all ends putting politics over policing, absolutely disgusting. And that's where we're at. And it's sad. And I really do believe that identity politics has been sold too far, and people fall into that trap. Well, he looks like me, so he must understand me. He sounds like me, he must really get it. And it's far from the truth. And the reality is you're just being used because he looks like you and sounds like you. That's the truth. Let's get on to the next topic. Let's do it, brother.
Yeah. Anything else, Marlon?
yeah, I shared a article in the chat with you guys about this guy, and I don't know if we talked about it enough, but in that article they mentioned this guy's policy positions. Prior to Zohan, he was very critical of the socialists. Right? They stated before in 2022 that they were voting Republican. They were very conservative, right? And the whole point is now, they've gone over that. Okay, so the article that's in the chat, and if you can search for this headline, it brings up those points as well. So, but let's move on to the next one.
Yeah, exactly. He's a shapeshifter. He's a chameleon. Should be Shamsul the chameleon. Yeah. So
Shamsul Haque is a hack.
So yeah. So Zohran Mamdani and now Shamsul are gonna make your life more affordable, right? So you were told that you were gonna get fast and free buses, right? And what we came to find out is that Zohran Mamdani immediately went back on that, and he went to, you're just gonna get fast buses. And everybody that knows the state of the MTA currently, that's not happening. And the fact that Long Island Railroad is now on a strike, it's even more insane, right, under these policies. So what comes out is that not only are you not going to get fast and free buses, you're going to get very expensive public safety services, such as ambulances. So listen to this interview with Morgan McKay. She's interviewing Dean Fullahan, who's Mamdani's deputy mayor or like chief of staff. I think his chief of staff's the other girl, but he's close. Dean Fullahan was de Blasio chief. What is
first deputy mayor?
He's first deputy mayor, and he was
He was also first deputy mayor under de Blasio too.
Yeah, under de Blasio. That's what he is. So She has Dean Fullahan on here, and they want to discuss their new proposal to increase ambulance fees. So they want to charge patients even if they aren't transported by ambulance but are treated at the scene by ambulance. No ambulance fee would raise an additional $10 million annually. So, while they're telling you they're going to make things more affordable for you, they're making things even more unaffordable, just more taxes. So listen to this interview. Dean was completely disingenuous in this interview, and we'll talk about it after.
Mamdani is proposing to increase ambulance fees and charge ambulance fees. So if someone is treated at the scene by EMS, they will still be charged for an ambulance even if they don't take it. Is that fair when healthcare costs are already so high?
The goal here is on insurance companies and Medicaid payment. It is not to put any burden on any individual. It's simply to say that if the ambulance goes to the hospital, the billing process includes insurance companies and Medicaid. That's all it's doing. It's saying, okay, if that doesn't happen and treatment occurs there, the insurance companies and the Medicaid should be paying. It's not about the individual paying.
If an individual is forced to pay, though, is there going to be something there that helps them out?
That is not the goal at all. So we'll make sure that is not happening, and that this is simply targeted at getting the appropriate Medicaid payments and the appropriate insurance company payments.
There was also a very small cut to veteran services. Did you have any more information? It was unspecified, just exactly what that would target.
It was a very small cut, below 100,000. So it was very minor. I think there may have been some additional pieces that came in last year's adopted budget that the council added. And remember, the budget process is not done. We care deeply about veteran services and making them effective. And we will make sure that we're delivering to our veterans. It's a commitment that this administration has, that the mayor has, and we're going to achieve. And we are now in the process. The council hearings start, and we're now in the process of moving to the final budget in June.
So you heard it there. Basically, you're going to be paying more fees when an ambulance comes. And we know, look, the majority of calls that get to 911 are not going to be a tax-paying New Yorker with healthcare. So you with healthcare, what's going to happen? You're going to need an ambulance. You're going to call the ambulance. All these additional fees are going to get tacked on you. And New York City government can't control your insurance company. So your insurance company could just say, yeah, I'm not covering this. And then guess what? Where Morgan, I think, messed up is she said, well, what happens if they charge the patient? It's not if, it's when they charge the patient, because we all know, like I was just at the dentist. I got like a $2,000 bill at the dentist. LBA dental plan only covers $2,000 per family for the year. Right. So I got a $2,000 bill. I have 2 kids. I had braces, all this other stuff, plus my wife, plus mine. So I literally get a $2,000, $2,200 bill, and it says patient's responsibility, $2,200, because the insurance company is covering 0 of it. And that will happen here. And basically, the middle class, again, the working class, I don't even want to say the middle class, the working class, whether you're poor or middle class, you're struggling, you go to work every day, you have a health insurance. The cost for you to call 911 is always going to come back to you. And that cost will continue to rise, even though you live in New York City your entire life and you're a tax-paying working citizen. If you call 911 once or twice in your life, that would be a lot.
Yeah. Think how much this plays into the last discussion we had, people voting for people because they look like them, and here you are getting screwed in the long run, there's a lot of, in addition to the ambulance fees, there are a lot of other fees that are mentioned here. We'll get to it as we go around, but I also posted a link to an article that brings up all these points in the chat. But it's again, this budget issue is going to come up repeatedly, and it's coming up next year. It's coming up the year after that, and that's before the stuff with the real estate really hits the paper. So I suspect it's actually going to be even more than that. So again, like John said, we went from free buses to you're paying, you're going to be paying a lot more in various fees and backdoor taxes in the city, and that includes all of us. And it includes all of us, including those of you who voted for Zohan because he looks like you, okay, or he's a brown skinned guy, okay.
Keep in mind right now, just the cost of an ambulance right now is anywhere from approximately $1,300 to I think it's around $1,900 for the research I've done after when we said we were going to speak about this. And so with the bill that could be going up right now, it's this is astronomical. I mean, even if EMS just comes to the scene and you don't get transported, it's around $600 that gets charged to your insurance. And so who's ultimately going to pay the burden, as always, for uninsured motorists, for uninsured patients, is the people that are actually insured. I mean, think about it. If you're in any state right now in this country that has a high amount of uninsured motorists, when we talk about car insurance, your car insurance is astronomical. In a lot of states in this country, some of the states have high uninsured motorists. And so the people that are actually insured are the ones that pay for it. So it's the same thing when it comes to this. If they're going to charge people and they're not being paid, which ultimately we're going to anticipate, and most people that get traveled by ambulance, from my experience doing policing, are not insured. And so the reality is, who pays that burden is the insured. And as just John told you, that's the reality. There's always a threshold there. Look, you talk about a dental plan, and yet who's the patient responsibility? John, you end up flipping the entire $2,200 because there's a threshold. There's almost only so much the insurance is going to pay. So ultimately what it means is that people end up paying out of pocket. And that's the reality. And I learned it with Derek battling cancer. Insurance only carries you so far. It's scary. And the prices are just astronomical. I had to deal with some medicines that were $40,000 for a 30-day supply. There are actually medicines that obviously I wasn't going to get, but I found that are actually in the millions for a 30-day supply. So there's no doubt about it. We don't know what these numbers could go to. And ultimately it falls down to the people that are actually insured. The people that hold insurance get screwed. Modern Samurai says insurance is a scam. You're absolutely right. It is a total scam. There's a lot of red tape behind it. And the reality is, if you're a good card carrying person that actually carries your insurance, the burden falls on you. Because if someone's extremely poor and they're not insured, well, then they're not paying anyway. And as I said, that's why I made the comparison. If you hold auto insurance in some states, including New York, it's a lot of uninsured motorists. Well, the reality is your insurance, the burden is on you, and the insured are the ones that pay more. It's the same thing for ambulances.
Yeah. I mean, so, the affordability thing goes out the window totally. And then the other thing that we're seeing is, and we spoke about this a lot, so we'll just talk about it briefly, is the protest response that's been happening.
Wait, John, before you go on to that, could we go back to the last topic again before I move on?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I think we're I don't want us to miss out on this, but I brought up the fees that you're going to be paying, right? So these are some of the fees that you guys are going to be paying, right? And think how much this plays into the super speeders bill and the fact that they want to lower the tolls, lower the speeding threshold around the city, right? But there's something else I want to point out in this entire discussion, right? That the budget, as it's planned, still relies upon short-term pension savings, which means they are dead set on those deferring those contributions to pensions, which is something that we talked about before, but you guys really have to pay attention to. And there's another article that I wanted to bring up. I'm not sure I'm going to have time to as we move on to the next discussion, but in it, they once again mentioned that Mamdani is talking to the unions, and it's this one. And again, it clearly states that Mamdani is counting on pension restructuring to balance the budget. So not only are you going to be paying more fees, including what we just talked about with the ambulance, but they are counting on restructuring the pension. Okay. The pension contributions. And it says in this article that Mamdani's proposal would stretch out payments another 5 years, setting the deadline to 2037 instead of 2032, which is set right now, meaning that the city right now is obligated to pay out 39 billion in uh 39 billion by 2032, and now they want to stretch it out to 2037. They essentially want to kick the can down the road, which means that 39 billion is going to be an even more exorbitant amount by 2037. So the this budget and the ambulance fees are part of a measure that includes other fees that are coming, and other adjustments that are coming to your wallet, and which is why we're talking about this, and which is why you damn sure should be paying attention to this and speaking out about this if you're on or off the job. So
Oh yeah, the and that's a good point. I totally forgot about that. And what Mamdani's team's saying is that the unions are all on board and they don't expect any pushback, by the way. So your unions aren't telling you that. So I mean, that's another thing I would be asking, whatever union you're in, is this something that you're going to be on board with? And because what Mamdani's saying is they're all on board. So
yeah.
and I'm sure there'll be raises on the table for that, right? Oh, well, we're going to do that to get you guys the raise, right? That'll be like, I believe that'll be the push. That'll be how they'll sell it to you and make it palatable, and you'll all be like, "Nah, it's not a bad thing," you know.
Well, I actually think the way they're going to sell it to union, the membership, is they're going to say, hey, listen, Detroit already set the precedent that federal bankruptcy, Title IX bankruptcy, it takes precedent over state constitution, which it does, because Detroit, that's what happened in Detroit, right? So even though you're going to say, these guys are going to say, oh, my pension is guaranteed by the state. Sure. But Title IX, Title IX takes precedent over that. Okay. And during a Title IX bankruptcy, your pension can be adjusted. It's an emergency, and, it's going to be adjusted. Right. I think the unions are going to tell membership, hey, we got to make a deal that's beneficial to us before we get to that crisis, because if we get to a crisis, Title IX takes precedent over the state constitution, and your pension is going to be adjusted unilaterally. So let's make a bilateral agreement with the city.
Yeah, I don't think they're ever gonna. I don't think they're gonna admit that, dude. They're gonna sell them with raises. I guarantee it.
Well, listen, it's happened throughout it's happened throughout the entire country. Listen to this. This came out in the Washington State Journal the other day. Washington's Governor Bob Ferguson signed House Bill 2034 on the first day of April. The law formally terminates law enforcement officers and firefighters retirement system Plan 1 on June 30, 2029. It also creates a successive fund that preserves on paper the benefits of this annuity plan. So what they're trying to do is, just as the New York City Police Pension Fund is its own fund, the same thing they have in Washington State. Some of these pension funds are their own funds, and they're trying to remove that and move to these collective annuity funds. So it's happening. It's happening throughout this entire country. So if anyone thinks their pensions are impervious, you need to pay attention to what's going on through the entire country. Detroit, Baltimore. If you have a moment, look up what happened with the Washington State right now, what the governor's trying to push there. Bill 2034. Take a look, because that can come to New York also. Because a lot of stuff that's happened in Washington State really mirrors what's happened in New York. It's on opposite sides of the country, but has a lot of the same progressive ideals. And if you see like places like Washington State, the rich people are leaving Washington State, the businesses are leaving, and the same things happen in New York City, in New York State.
Yeah. Yeah. Last thing, that article I shared with you guys in the chat, right? This is a statement from Comptroller Mark Levin in there. He warned that the budget still relies on $2.8 billion in one-time measures and $2.3 billion in short-term pension savings, without solving the fact that city government continues to spend more than we intake. Okay, even in a year of record revenues. So yeah, pay attention to all of this, guys.
Yeah, it's important. Like I said, Ma, it's important that they understand this is not just New York State. This is happening in the entire country. And it's being passed in these other states. And so if anyone thinks it's a purpose in New York State, they're not really understanding the actual state constitution also. So it only takes 2 votes on the legislature to actually even eradicate your pensions. Is it is it? Some people are like, oh, that's impossible. No, it's not impossible. It's difficult, but it can be done.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of people like try to make the claim that like we're Chicken Little, the sky's falling, the sky's falling. We're not saying the sky's falling tomorrow, next week, or next year. We're saying that if we continue to go down this route, the sky will indeed fall. You know, and the same thing, like we warned you 3 years prior about the healthcare, and nobody cared until you almost lost it all. It's the same things happening here, so it's wild. And then to show you how your healthcare continues to get diminished, and now New York City is like, no, we're gonna put it on the insurance companies. It's like, no, that's coming by way of me. Like you're taking that's more money out of my pocket. So and think about and just my last point on this, if you guys got anything else, think about what we were talking about not that long ago with the response times too. Like you're paying for you're paying a lot more money for a much lower service that you previously had. You had that service free. Now it's, if you have a heart attack in New York City, I mean, chances of the ambulance getting to you and getting to your hospital aren't good. Aren't good. Their response times are much higher than they used to be, and you're getting a diminished quality of service than you used to get. But you're going to pay a lot more money for it. So you're watching these systems crumble and implode on themselves. And it's all a result of mismanagement and politics and our elected officials' inability to stop spending money and throwing money at bad services and bad programs. And instead, they want to double down and give more of it.
It's sad because most young people that vote in primaries, or they just vote in general, those are the two subjects that they really don't delve into and really think about, because it doesn't affect them at a young age. And that's your medical and your retirement plans. And unfortunately, it's the people that care are older people, and it's obviously a smaller population when it comes to older people. So a lot of these things, I do believe they go by the wayside. And I think we really need to educate the young, people that are getting into careers, especially law enforcement, firefighters, to understand how medical can be affected, and your retirement plan, how important it is. Because ultimately, those 20 years go quick, or 25 years, depending on whatever retirement plan you're in. It goes quick, and it's really important. And I think people just don't understand their medical plans, and young people just don't care. And I have to admit, I was in that position also when I was young. My medical plan and retirement plan, it wasn't in my crosshairs as much as it should be, right? Because you don't see your mortality, you don't see that your health eventually takes a decline in many aspects, and you don't realize how important your retirement plan is until you get to that point. So it's unfortunate. So we really need to educate the young.
Yeah, last thing I have on this, guys, is that we put up a segment, an excerpt over the weekend, talking about Staten Island. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but if you happen to miss that segment on here, the segment is up on YouTube, right? But in that segment, we also talked about we also brought this website up, right? It's from the comptroller's office, and you can see for yourself which city agencies are have current vacancies. Keep in mind, the city has an authorized headcount of over 300K workers, but right now they're only staffed for 291 workers. It's about a 5% vacancy rate. But you can, on this website, I'll put up a link in the chat, but on this website, you can see for yourselves which agencies have vacancy rates. And how many times have we talked about the homeless problem in the city, and like all the EDPs pushing people on the tracks in the subway right now? But look at the agency, 26.68%. But again, I think this all ties into the
what
same
agency
problem.
is that, Maul? And I can't say it. What
Homeless
agency?
Services, Department of Homeland Services. Yeah, it's 26.68%. Next up is probation, and then corrections is 19%. So I thought this site was interesting because it we've been talking about the decline of services in the city, and I think we're going to reference this website a lot as other issues keep coming up. Other issues like the EMS response times. FDNY is currently nearly 3%, has a 3% vacancy rate. So, but you don't know how much that vacancy rate, if it's firefighters or EMS right now. but you have to wonder with response times being what they are now for EMS, if that's mainly concentrated on EMS. So I'll put up the link to this one in the chat as well if you guys want to see it for yourself.
Yeah, and then so we've been talking a lot about the SRG and the NYPD's protest posture and the diminishment of the NYPD's protest posture, and we've been seeing a lot of protests outside of synagogues turn into complete riots, and we've watched the NYPD completely mishandle them. Where you only see white shirts involved, you don't see any of the cops. This riot in particular, this was staffed by 400 cops. They knew it was going to get insane, and the NYPD, because of their protest posture and their inability, I don't want to say their inability, but their unwillingness to make arrests when arrests are deserved and keep these situations from devolving into chaos. You watch it just turn into a complete shit show. And so Shamsul Haque and Zohran Mamdani have been doubling down on this, right? They've been doubling down on the fact, well, at least Mamdani has, that he wants to decouple the NYPD's counterterrorism resources from First Amendment activities. Now, it's so dangerous, in fact, that 2 days ago, we just found out that the FBI, in conjunction with the NYPD's Joint Terrorism Task Force, thwarted a terrorist attack that was being planned on a major synagogue in New York City. They haven't unleashed the name of the synagogue, but this is coming outside of a synagogue. And what is a synagogue? What is a church? What is a mosque? It's a First Amendment activity, right? A protest outside of a mosque is surrounding the First Amendment, right? And what Mamdani and all of his upper rank and top officials in the NYPD, including Assistant Chief Minch over here, they don't believe that any longer, because Zohran Mamdani doesn't believe it any longer, that our counterterrorism resources should be deployed at these events. So we're setting ourselves up for the next large terrorist attack in the city. And the blood is going to be on the hands of the upper echelon of the NYPD in conjunction with the mayor's office and all of his supporters. And it's also going to be on the hands of the unions and all of those in leadership and law enforcement who have not called out this insanity. The fact that I don't believe that the NYPD just stopped being able to properly police protests and riots when Eric Adams took office. Actually, let me take it back, in 2020, while Bill de Blasio was still in office. For some reason, after 2020, the NYPD no longer knows how to handle protests. You know, when the majority of these officers that are here were police officers when we were able to control these things. So this is being done intentionally. It's intentionally reckless. Again, I believe it's criminal in my opinion. And, I don't know what's going to be done to get this back if no one's willing to acknowledge just how dangerous this is. This is insane to me. I mean, I don't understand what I'm watching here, and I don't understand how they let this happen. And it's just, we see it night in and night out. We've seen it night in and night out since October 7th of 2023. But really, we've seen that whenever a crowd wants to take over New York City streets from 2020 on, we have no control any longer. And that is because the leadership of the NYPD is beholden to these cowardly leftists and intentionally dangerous leftists. This should not be happening on the streets of New York, especially when you have a detail with 400 cops there to show how incompetent that was, to the fact that chiefs have to roll around on the ground and arrest people, and then watch the NYPD go on how they only had 4 arrests when streets were taken over, sidewalks were taken over, cops were assaulted, civilians were assaulted, civilians were harassed. I mean, I think it just shows the state of where New York City is. And I believe, unfortunately, the next terrorist attack in New York City is imminent. It's only a matter of time at this point.
Yeah, well, I think that's the intention here, you know? I think they're putting in conditions that lead to chaos in the city. Chaos and civil unrest. And I think that's what they want, you know? And it's what, like when you remove the SRG from protesting, then you keep encouraging protesters to to antagonize ICE, to basically create riotous conditions as ICE is trying to do their job. You're creating an environment where people where tensions are going to boil over, and you're getting more incidents like this. And I think what the political establishment wants now is more civil unrest, and I think that more civil unrest invites the corporations to come in with more tech, more drones, more surveillance, and I think it's a hand. I think it's a relationship that's working hand in hand right now.
I agree with you, Marlon, because we often talk about this, and I think ultimately the goal is to move to AI and robotics to be the core foundation of policing. Right? No longer will it be the human element, and which is why I believe that when we hear past mayors like Eric Adams and other mayors throughout this country who say they're not concerned about their recruitment failures, not concerned about their retention problems with policing and a law enforcement profession on a national level, it's because ultimately I think they all want to move to AI and robotics. And we see it. I see it throughout states, throughout this entire country, numerous police departments where their reports are not even done by the human element anymore. A lot of the policing apparatus is done by robotics and AI. Even when it comes to traffic stops, a lot of it is done by AI. And so ultimately, what's the most tangible form of government to move the needle and move to AI and robotics is to attack the law enforcement profession. Now, this NYPD leadership, what we see happening at this protest is absolutely horrendous, right? Someone put here, and it's a good comment, and I understand what you're saying, but there's a bigger picture here. And let me see if I can find that again here. So it's, is it LOL JK9443 says their protest posture is contradictory, but we all know that white shirts always have gone hands-on at protests to have a better chance for 3/4, and they're not stuck with the bodies. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. On a small level, there is some of that where chiefs, I do believe they utilize the protest or chaos to solidify or validate their 3/4 frivolous claims. However, there's a bigger picture here. These protests are out of control right now. They're getting so violent. It's because of the posture that they're in, not utilizing SRG, playing these woke progressive politics to their politicians, putting politics over policing. But you have to ask yourself why, and it's to move the agenda. There's a big economic wheel in New York City and other states throughout this country and other cities for allowing policing to go to AI and robotics. We told you often of the private contracts that surrounded the shelters and the other stuff under Eric Adams, and no different right now under Zohran Mamdani. And I do believe a lot of it's AI, going to AI and robotics. I agree with you, Marlon. You and I often speak about this, and I think that their posture is absolutely terrible. There's no way that these chiefs, doing all the years of policing, don't understand that. How do you quell a situation? By making arrest. How do you quell a future situation? How do you prevent future violence at future protests? By making people aware that the NYPD is there to make a presence, and if you do create chaos, you will be arrested. John, you and I spoke about it the other day. We don't even need 400 cops. We would be able to, if we were in charge at some time, would have quelled this with far less than 400 cops. But we came from a different school of policing, where politics wasn't over policing, and it was make arrest. You would immediately look for that person that's inciting the riot. The people that are out there with the biggest voices that are inciting the riots out there, inciting the people there, would be arrested. There would be mass arrest, and we don't see that anymore. For arrest at a protest in a violent situation like this is absolutely nothing. In retrospect, it has no impact. So I do believe that there is a bigger agenda here. I do believe AI and robotics ultimately, and defund and just eradicate the entire profession, is the ultimate move.
Yeah, I don't know, peoples. Anything else on this one?
Yeah,
I got something funny that just came down the pipeline.
yeah, we got to talk about that. Yeah, quick thing, guys. Keep in mind, 19.4% of New York State's budget comes from Wall Street profits, and those profits go into real estate. So when when these guys on Wall Street have a very profitable year, what do? They sink their money into trophy real estate in Manhattan, right? But not only that, but keep in mind that that what is it, 8%? Yeah, according to the comptroller's own office, 8% of New York's securities industry generates 8% of total New York City tax receipts as well. So a lot of money comes out of Wall Street, and if Wall Street does well, it helps plug the city's budget gaps. So what are we seeing now? What I think is that the New York City politicians and New York State politicians are putting in conditions in place that benefit Wall Street, because they know if Wall Street profits off of the surveillance capitalism, that money they make is going to plug their budget gaps as well. So I think it's a hand-in-hand relationship right now. That's it for me on this one.
Anything else on that, Eric?
No. Well said. I think we definitely covered it. Let's get to the funny stuff.
All right, let's get to this. So Eric Sanders, who's the ponytail faggots attorney, right? I refer to him as the Timu Eric Adams, the Eric Adams that never could, because Eric Adams was in fact successful at his grift. Eric Sanders, not so much, right? He just continues to take on more cases, write these ridiculous AI generated posts and memes about them, and then it seems like the cases just never go anywhere. So it's weird. It's weird. It's almost like he's just collecting fees. So he writes this, and by the way, I'm blocked, so I can't even respond to this coward. So he says, and he writes this: "It's always a matter of professional amusement to witness how deeply I live rent-free in the minds of certain low-tier commentators." So you don't live in our heads. That's one, Eric. Like, we don't care about you. We're just disgusted that we ever even gave you any type of platform to allow police officers to think you were anything but a low-life ambulance chasing, never was a cop. Timu version of Eric Adams, right? So that's one. But you definitely don't live rent-free in our heads. I actually feel bad for you. I feel worse for Sal and Frankie, who hired you, and even anyone else that hired you, because I think that you're a fraud. So that's just my personal opinions on it. He says, for those tracking the continuous unhinged commentary over at the Finest Unfiltered podcast, hosted by John D. Macari Jr., affectionately known as Tiny Tim. And again, Eric, you, Sal, and Jack, any day of the week. You're a little bit too old for me, so not you, but your ponytailed boyfriend or fishnet stocking wearing whore, known as Sal Greco or the Sal Greco. Any day of the week, brother. We could set it up. We could do it for charity, or maybe we could even do it for some lawyer fees. I'm willing to box. Let's do it. I'm willing to box. I'm willing to do MMA. We could do it in New York City. I know you're gonna have to get Sal security because he's so popular and he's so big that he's scared to actually walk the streets of New York City. So I don't know. You're gonna need to surround him because apparently he's so famous that nobody listens or likes any of his shit. But so he says, they remain deeply scorned because I flatly declined to represent them, which is a blatant, bold-faced lie.
First lie.
Eric Sanders reached out to us after all of that nonsense happened with us and said he wanted to represent us for free, and that we had a major case here and that we were family, and that he was going to send over a complaint for our review. That complaint never came. And so he didn't flatly decline anything. So he's a liar. That conversation happened on the phone.
It's a huge lie.
So it's completely a defamatory lie and shows your true character, Eric, because I remember the entire conversation where you said we were family. And I remember hanging up with you and talking to Eric and say, I don't think I want this guy to represent us, and I don't think I trust this guy at all. I think he potentially took our information to pass it out to everybody else. And so complete, utter liar, and so cowardly that he can name my name while I'm blocked on social media. So you're a fraud. That's why you're that's why you're the Timu Eric Adams. What a skell you really are. And so he lies there. And then he says, naturally, that is the one critical piece of context they conveniently omit for their listeners. Eric, if I misrepresented anything, you're a lawyer, so you know what you got to do, my friend. You know what you got to do. But it was me and Eric and you on that phone call on a Zoom, and you remember what you said, my friend, and we remember what you said. So we're family. I'm not even going to charge you. Blah 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 blah. Anyway, you never sent over the complaint because you're a fraud and a phony. And honestly, even if you would have sent the complaint over, I more than likely wasn't going to sign it anyway. And you knew it. So that's why you didn't bother, right? So to the detractors and the reactionary echo chambers, your obsession is exceptional for business. Every time you engage in your predictable, intellectual, bankrupt, and racist rhetoric, so we're racists, you inadvertently execute a high-value marketing campaign for my firm. You aren't damaging the brand. You are driving organic traffic through an elite civil rights practice. Yeah, civil rights, who was dead silent on the vaccine mandate. So he goes on, and by the way, he's only doing this to get his name back out there. That's why he's doing this, because I don't believe business is as great as he says it is. And if he is, I'd like to see some victories, Eric. How come Sal still doesn't have how come Sal still hasn't won his case? How come he still hasn't won his case? How come Frankie Pagliucci still hasn't won his case? How come Quatisha Epps still hasn't won her case? How come all of the other people that you're representing are still just out there? How much money have you taken from these people, Eric? Why don't you tell us this? I sincerely appreciate the continuous zero-cost lead generation. Keep broadcasting my name. Just ensure you spell it correctly for the people. Capiche? I will spell it. It's TEMUERIC ADAMS, Timu Eric Adams. Then he puts this ridiculous meme, or whatever you want to call it, AI generated meme out there. And he says, they're not attacking me, they're advertising me. Real grievance. I decline to represent them. Lie. You're an attorney and you're a liar, and you're standing in front of One Police Plaza like the phony fraud you are. You're not a civil rights attorney. If you didn't realize that all of the injustices and the civil rights violation the vaccine mandate had, then you're a liar. You're a race hustler. That's all you are. He says that's the context we leave out. So he completely lies on the first part of it. He says every attack is a marketing campaign. You're not damaging the brand. You're driving organic traffic. Thank you for the zero cost. Low tier commentators, unhinged commentary, reactionary echo chambers, intellectually bankrupt, racist rhetoric, predictable, obsessed, irrelevant. So it was so irrelevant that you had to make this entire post. So Eric, again, you're a fraud. Your boyfriend with the ponytail, well, he's not your boyfriend. The guy that you use and you pimp out like he's your whore, he's a fraud. And so is everybody that surrounds themselves with you, or anyone that even gives you the slightest bit of credibility. So, yeah, you want to lie about us while we're blocked and call our name out while we're blocked? You're a real tough guy, bro. Real tough guy. Everybody, I guess not everybody's watching the show then, because not everybody's watching the show because you still got to come and attack us to get yourself heard on this show where actually people listen to it. It's like, yeah, everybody's watching. I'm getting millions of views, except that I just can't find anywhere where it is, so.
Let's talk about lies. Let's talk about lies and truths. Here's the first lie. So first of all, Eric, we did sit down and we spoke to you. And we spoke to you and you said, you know what? You got a case here. I'm going to do it for free. You did tell us your family. And what you did, you accepted all the information in our case. You wanted all that information. You still have it because you never gave it back. You took all the information we had. And John and I both said, you know what? We're not very comfortable with this. But at the time, Sal was rooting for you. You contacted us, like, okay, let's see where this goes. And we never heard from you. But you sure had our information. So who did you pass it on to? So first lie is that you declined to represent us. No, instead, you just cut off communication like the coward that you are, rather than actually have a conversation about what you did with the material and the information that we had. We never heard about that. Here is the one truth. Yes, you're right. We did help your firm. We did help the Eric Sanders firm. We got you a lot of exposure. Numerous people have contacted you from watching the show when you were on the platform of the Finest Unfiltered. So you did benefit. And it did help your show. And it's probably helping your show now. It's probably helping your firm now because of the drama, because of the show. But it's not because of the show that you're on right now. It's not because of the propaganda that you're pushing there. So there's the other lie. But hey, if you got to go out and make these memes, thanks for being a fan. I really appreciate it. We appreciate you being a fan of the Finest Unfiltered. So you're damn right. We did help you. We sure did, John. We sure did help his firm. Numerous people have called me, hey, should I call Eric Sanders? And you know what? Like a mature gentleman, I said, listen, that's on you. All right? I didn't badmouth you. I said, that's up to you. But I would keep your ears and eyes open. I would never tell a grown man what to do, but I would keep your ears and eyes open. And you never once thanked us or showed any gratitude for the people that have contacted you. I'm sure numerous cases you've gotten because they watched the Finest Unfiltered. And now that you're on a different show, the drama helps you. So God bless you. Here's to you, brother. That's all right. But we do appreciate you being a fan. I'm sure you watch this show constantly. We appreciate it, all the information. But yes, Eric Sanders did contact us. You said you would take the case. And you know what? Even more than that, if you remember, you were on Sal Greco's show while it was still on the Finest Unfiltered platform, and you said, I am going to file this case. Do you want me to play it back? Do you remember the movie A Few Good Men?
Yep.
Tom Cruise says to Jack Nicholson, he says, do you want me to play back the tape? Because we can play it back. There's a show that you're on with Sal Greco, and you said, I'm going to be filing this pretty soon. John, do you
actually,
remember
yeah, we should actually pull that up. Actually, we're going to pull that up, Eric. We're going to pull that up,
and remind him.
And you know why we're racist, right, Eric?
Oh, I know.
Because we think that black people could actually run a mile and a half in a certain time limit to be cops. Like we don't think that white people are superior to black people. So, but Eric Sanders does. So yeah, 100%. We're gonna pull up exactly what he said. And Eric, here's another thing. After he said that on Sal Greco's show, I was reached out to by numerous reporters asking if we're gonna file a case. And those reporters know. And I said, I'm not a litigious person. I don't believe that we're going to be filing a case with Eric Sanders. I don't. I'm not a big fan of him. And that's exactly what I told those reporters. And so, Eric, you're a phony liar, bro. And you are the Timu Eric Adams, bro. The only reason you attack Eric Adams and you went after Eric Adams and you jumped on the bandwagon is because you were jealous, bro. You didn't care that he was corrupt. You were just jealous.
Isn't it funny how convenient? Joe 6899, Joe 14% body fat says Eric Sanders is a good man. Everyone doesn't listen to these clowns. I'm curious. Joe, 14%. Do you know someone by the name of Jack? Is it possible when you look in the mirror, do you see someone called Jack? I don't know. It's very possible. But I tell you what, Eric, you know damn well there's a bold-faced lie because we have the evidence, right? You're a lawyer. Aren't you and your network often talk about evidence-based policing, evidence-based information? Well, we have the evidence. We have on the Sal Greco show, you clearly said, I'm about to open this case. I'm going to represent them. That's okay. If you forgot, we'll remind you. Don't worry. Marlon, I see some clips coming out pretty soon because sometimes people forget and they need to be reminded. So no problem. Yeah. Just like you said in A Few Good Men. Do you need me to play it back? And Jack Nicholson says, I know what I said. Eric, do you remember what you said? I do. I remember it.
I remember it clear as day. You know what? We're gonna play that back. Video incoming for you. So a little bit more free advertising for you incoming. But yeah, I mean the truth is what it is. I think Marlon put out a clip yesterday or the day before, and I think that's really what elicited that response. So hold on, let me pull this down. And so that is what it is, my friends. Authenticity over agenda. Like we said, there's numerous people that try to continuously subvert this podcast, and that's what it is. I mean, if you watch the Sal Greco show, this is what you're watching. I mean, that's what it is. It's completely controlled. That he's just pissed because he couldn't subvert the Finest Unfiltered and take us over. That's what it was. And so, yeah, I'm totally glad that you never sent it. I mean, because it would have been real awkward when I refused to sign it anyway. So, I mean, it would have been real awkward, again, and then they went ahead and sued Juju for whatever reason and then pulled the case back. So, yeah. Sorry.
Is it possible? Eric? I don't know. I'm going out on a limb here. I wasn't a lawyer. I was told that you're a lawyer, so you know more than we do. Is it possible that the reason why we never signed with you is because you took our information and forwarded somewhere else? You didn't want to violate client attorney privilege if you signed up with us? I don't know. Is that possible, John? I don't know. I'm just going out here on a limb. It's very possible. Maybe you covered your ground, huh? I tell you what, Eric, there's truths and there's lies. And one thing is damn true. You're absolutely right. You're welcome. The Finest Unfiltered for helping your firm, because we sure did help your firm. And you never said thank you one time, but you sure did eat off of it. You ate pretty well. You still are.
Yeah, I didn't know that he had that many 511 awards though. Like, you know, got to get a rack of 511s and DWIs. Yeah, real. Those are real awards, huh?
Yeah. Like John said, guys, I think what we're seeing from Sanders is they're upset about this. That I put this up, over the weekend, and it's because there's still people. I spoke to some people over the weekend who still think that Sal is still part of this network, and I'm trying to avoid mentioning Sal because at a certain point people think we're like, I don't want people to think we're bullying him. Personally, we think Sal is as much of a prisoner of that show as because I think Sanders has too much influence over the show. Okay, he has too much of an influence over that show, and he wants to be a producer on the show. And you can see with this post by Sanders how he's trying to like the role he plays in trying to influence perception and that show again. Now, keep in mind, Sanders only mentions John in that post, okay? And this is the reason why he's mentioning John is because he wanted to twist it and say John and Eric are racist, And this is why they won't talk about me, because if you mention me, that goes out the window, But he wants to paint John and Eric a certain way, and that's not true at all, okay? Now, the reason why Sal is no longer here is because that show has become Sanders' show, and Sanders has too much of an influence over it. And it sucks for Sal, because Sal his life is basically in Sanders' hand with that case, and Sanders should be concentrating on getting Sal's life back and getting his pension back, rather than jumping on social media and writing these stupid AI generated posts. You should be focused on Frankie and Sal's case and the other cases that you have, rather than doing this. This doesn't benefit anyone. So what I think he's doing right now with his posts is, I think he's engagement baiting, and he just wants us to keep mentioning them and because anytime we mention that show, you guys go watch the show because you want to see drama, when in reality, at this point, he should be given a chance to sink or swim on his own merits, because when he was on this network, we gave him lots of pointers to improve that show. A lot of them he ignored because he's a little arrogant. Okay. But I think anytime we mention him on the show, his podcast gets 1,000 views, and it's not based on the content. It's based on, because a lot of people want to go see drama. And I think he needs to sink or swim on his own merits and improve the show on his own and grow the show on his own. And I think if he had grown it on his own since he got on the network, he would have had more of an appreciation for being part of the team and not thinking of himself as being bigger than, everybody. Okay. And I think now that he has to grow it on his own, he will have a greater appreciation for having been on this network and for how much work it takes to create a show and a podcast that gets people to come and view it every day. So,
listen, I'm not hating on you for trying to get the advertisement. Hey, listen, if this is the way that you need to get advertisement, clearly it's worked. The process, being on the Finest Unfiltered network and now being with Sal's show separately, this works for him. Drama, yes. Drama gets attention. One thing I realized from the upper echelon of police department in retirement, many of those upper echelon managers love negative attention. Look at John Shell. He loves negative attention because any attention is better than none. And I think this, in my opinion, the same thing goes for Eric Sanders. He's getting attention. Now, clearly, honestly, I feel sorry for Sal. I do, because you're right, Mom. That's a good way to put it. He's a prisoner. But Sal's in a position right now that he has to stay with Eric Sanders because the balance of Sal's life is in the hands of Eric Sanders at this point. But where this case is going nowhere at this point. I mean, I looked up the case, and the judge wants to know what, what is going on with this case at this point. I feel sorry for Sal. I mean, it's a long time. Sal did get screwed over no matter what. He shouldn't have gotten terminated by the police department. Should there have been discipline or not? Yeah, I mean, there's different ways to skin a cat. You could look at it, but termination, I think they went way too far. So Eric Sanders, why are you not wrapping up this case right now? You've proved why we didn't sign with you, why we decided not to go further with you, because why is this case at this point with Sal Greco still going? Why are you concentrating your efforts on still advertising, but yet you haven't moved forward with Sal Greco's case? And the reality just shows right here. And that's fine. Listen, he could call us out. Instead, what you can say is thank you, because the exposure that you got on the Finest Unfiltered network clearly helped you. And that's why you, in my opinion, that's why you're putting this out here, to try to just get more attention, because maybe your firm is not doing as good as you like. So putting out a meme clearly gets attention. And I'm a firm believer negative attention is better than no attention at all. So I don't hate on you. Listen, if it gets you customers, God bless. But if you're out there and you're looking for attorneys, I would be mindful, and I would look at Sal's case and say, why is Sal's case still pending? Where is this case going? I mean, to me, it looked like it was a slam dunk. The case has been proved about criminal association within the NYPD. Why is this case not a slam dunk? How has this case not come to close yet? I don't get it. I don't get it. It seems like a slam dunk to me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I really got nothing to say other than like that was bait for bite, and Mullen's right. It's just to get more views, because honestly, they're struggling significantly. I mean, you look at the social media game, there's none. I mean, it's horrible. Like, they're not getting any views, they're not getting any comments, they're not getting any interactions, and they're trying really hard because people see that there's a narrative driven, and that was what I didn't want happening here. Like, you know what I mean? You guys didn't want happening here. And that's why we said, you know what? It's time to part ways. Like, we're not gonna be subverted. We're not gonna have someone telling us what we can and can't say. And this is the Finest Unfiltered. And, you know, that's what it is. I mean, so I don't really care. I don't feel bad for anybody. Everybody's their own man. You know, like I said, I don't think Sal should have been terminated by the NYPD. Was there discipline? Yeah, absolutely. There was discipline that was necessary, but I think they went above and beyond for political reason. And I think that was easily provable in a court of law. And if you had someone who was on there, and I feel bad only for the fact of that's who we choose. I feel equally as bad for Frankie Pagliucci, because I think that, you know, he's being sold a bag of goods too, unfortunately. I do. And I like Frankie a lot. And I feel almost responsible for not for Sal, because I only met Sanders through Sal, but I feel bad for anyone who ever used this guy as a result of his alignment with this network. That I feel bad for, absolutely. And, you know, I you know, and my thing is, like, you know me, I'm not like, I don't care if you totally disagree with me whatsoever. If you're good at what you do, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. If you're a good attorney, I don't care if you're a far left maniac. It doesn't matter to me. I'll still hire you. You know, I don't care if you don't like me because you're racist. I don't care. You know, it doesn't matter to me. If you're good at what you do, I'll still hire you. You know what I mean? If you're going to do a good job for me, I'll still hire you. If you're going to let your own biases get in the way of what you do, then I would still hire you. But yeah, but 100% he lied about, you know, he's obviously lying and defaming me, saying I'm a racist, which is ridiculous. And the other thing that he's lying and defaming about is that he wouldn't take our case. He literally was the one that presented the idea to us, and we didn't sign off on anything with him. And he was like singing our praises, like, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this for free. Then he went on Sal's show, even though we didn't talk to him, basically saying that he was going to file this case. And you know, and immediately there were reporters right on top of it asking, like, oh, are you guys going to file with him? And I literally said, I'm not a litigious person. The chances are no. More than likely, no. And, you know, and those of you in the media sphere know who I'm talking about that said that. So when I said that,
we kept it super professional. We never badmouthed him. We just said we're not looking to proceed forward. We're probably not going to sign with him. We kept it professional. But yet, in the same token, he had the entire timeline and sequence of events of everything that happened with the interaction with the NYPD, the khaki pants, the threats to our children. He has the entire information. He has all that information. He held on to. So that's that. And that's the goddamn truth.
And you know, the other thing that really, really bothers me is like me, like I always get in the way of my friends. Like I'll always get in the way, especially if it's like something that I believe is my fault. You know, I'll always get in the way from my friends, you know, and you know, Sal proved over and over again that he's not a real friend. I mean, and you know, the fact that he was out online bashing this guy, Jimmy Rodriguez, for 2 years, bashing him. And then Eric Adams and whoever else, for whatever reason, said that I was saying the things about Jimmy that Sal was saying. And then Jimmy threatens me, and Sal runs and hides like a girl and never says a word about it. And then just stops talking about then stops talking about him because he's afraid. And he's like, yeah, he called me. He's like, you know why? You know why they're not threatening me? Because of my father. That's why, because of my father. I'm like, Sal, are you out of your mind? Are you out of your fucking mind? Do you think anyone's scared of you, bro? I was like, you know, I was like, the reason he's like, yeah, it's because you're the weak link. I was like, I'm the weak link. I was like, I go to New York. I'll go anywhere. I'll go to whatever. I'll go to Jimmy Bronx Cafe. I'm not afraid of anybody. I was like, I'm the weak link. I'm like, they think that I'm the link they need to break because you don't have a voice. That's what it is. You know? Yeah, no, it's because of my father. Yeah, like, no, it's not because they know who you know, bro. Because believe me, I grew up in Bensonhurst. I grew up in Staten Island. We all know the same people. And what they'll say about me and what they'll say about you are two different things, right? Because I'm my own person and everybody fucking knows it. And you're not. I'm my own man and you're not.
I've had my suspicions, but more and more I'm starting to think I'm right. So Joe 6899, Joe 14% body fat. Are you Jack? Because it sure seems to seem like it. Maybe you're not. I don't know, but it seems like it to me. A lot of the stuff you say is very kiddish. So just be surprised, you know.
Oh, look who it is. Look who it is, miraculously. Oh,
I think I'm right.
Hi, Nin.
Yeah, there we go.
Nin. How you doing? How's everything? How's your other show doing, Nin? What's the matter? You missing us? You missing us over here?
Joe 6899 says I'm not Jack. I don't know, man. You sure seem like it to me. You sure seem like you could be a Jack. We got 40%.
Why am I fooling myself by saying I'm my own person and Sal's not? Clearly, everyone could see that. Everyone could see that, you know. Like, why am I fooling myself? You know.
I tell you, listen.
When you think of me, do you think that I was Roger Stone's lackey? No. When you think of me, do you think that I'm Eric Sanders' lackey? No. When you think of me, do you think I'm the Guardians Association lackey? No. When you think of me, you might not like me. You might think I'm an asshole. I'm really opinionated, but I'm my own person. Sorry.
Listen, I tell you straight up, I don't wish bad on nobody, but what I like to do is tell the truth and identify lies. And Eric Sanders, you're just outright lying here, brother. You know damn well we had a conversation with you. Damn well you wanted to take our case. And for some reason you didn't proceed forward with it because you were too busy getting every high-profile case within the NYPD that was race-baited, in my opinion. That was a sexy case in it. And you did say on this platform, and we have the evidence to remind you if you forgot, that you're going to proceed forward with the case and that you're going to file. You said it. So I can't wait to put it out there because I just want to remind you. Sometimes we forget. I know you're a busy man, so you might have forgot. So we'll remind you. We'll take care of that.
He's busy on social media. He should get busy winning some fucking cases.
Yeah.
That's what you should get busy with.
I'm just curious.
You get busy with settling the fucking cases and either getting people back to work or getting them paid out and just a little less focus on this podcast, dude. Little less focused on trying to prove me racist when you're cowardly and you're so cowardly. You're unwilling. We told you, dude. You're welcome on the platform. Come on here and tell us why we're racist. We'll have the conversation. We'll give you the floor. If you want a 20-minute rant, if you want a 10-minute rant, we'll give it to you. But your ideas are going to get challenged here. But you won't do that. You know. So I mean that's just the bottom line. You wanted to subvert us. You thought, oh, yeah, we're going to use these little white boys and we're going to use them as our mouthpiece. They don't know no better. They don't know me, bro. They don't know me, you know. Well, guess what, bro? You don't know us. So that's it, you know. And now you learn. So that's
you know what's interesting, John? You just made a point that really kind of like rung in my ear. That Eric Sanders and with the platform is trying to prove we're racist. Why would you have to prove it? If we were racist, so-called racist, it would show itself. You're either racist or you're not. You shouldn't have to prove it because you know damn well we're the furthest thing from racist. And sometimes I wonder if Eric Sanders, you know, if there's any reverse racism in him because Why would you have to even proceed forward saying it's racist for a black man to run a mile and a half? I think you should, we should be honor the fact that there's a high level of black athletes out there that they could probably sneeze at a mile and a half. I mean, it's the most ridiculous thing. It's stupid. It's stupid we even talk about this. Honestly, it's just stupid. Let's get to the coffee and donuts to the next topic.
Yeah, but last thing, I just want to bring up what Ron Lason's saying here. He said, let's not forget how Sal was sharing internal Finest Unfiltered text thread to Sanders, who was live tweeting responses to everything I was saying to fit his narrative and lawsuit. And that is 100% what happened. And when I called Sal out and he's like, nah, it didn't happen. I'm like, bro, Ron's texting you. I'm in the thread. Ron's texting you and Sanders is responding to Ron. Like, what are you doing, dude?
I found about that. Good point, Ron.
Where he's like, yeah, I spoke to this one and that one, because he was always calling everyone in the media, right? I never called anybody in the media. They were calling me. I don't pick up the phone and I'm like, hey, why don't you publish this story? I don't give a fuck. I honestly don't. I think half of you are controlled by your editors anyway. I like some of you. I think some of you are great investigative reporters, but I don't think anything, if something is going to come out, it's going to come out anyway, regardless if I'm going to say it or not. So it's none of my business. But he's consistently calling everyone. And he would say, oh yeah, I called them about this. I'm like, why are you telling reporters what me and you are discussing? Don't ever do that again. Don't ever talk to somebody again and say what I said to you in private. Don't ever do that again, And that was a consistent thread there too. So, I mean, I just think that's a great point. And yeah, honestly, I really agree with Marlon, dude. They're just engagement farming, and they're just showing you how poorly they're really doing it. And again, look at Sal's Instagram page. He has like 10,000 more followers than me. Why does he block the likes and I don't? Look at the engagement on what I post. Look at on the engagement when he posts. Look at the YouTube post. Same thing. Look at the YouTube. Look at the engagement. Look at the engagement on his. Look at his X account. Look at his TikTok. Look at all his accounts. Look at all of ours. They're totally different. They're totally different. And yet consistently behind our backs, because you're too cowardly to say what you got to say publicly, you throw little innuendos and you go out there and you talk amongst everyone. You're like, yeah, they're doing this, they're doing that. No, you're doing all that stuff, big guy. You're doing all that stuff. So, it's and I don't care. Look, I don't care. It just shows the truth always comes out. The truth came out already, and it'll continue to come out. And so, yeah. I would have probably made a video about this, but now that I'm thinking about it, it's not even worth my time, dude. The guy's a clown. Like, Eric Sanders, you are a clown. In my opinion, you are the Temu version of Eric Adams. The only reason you jumped on the bandwagon against Eric Adams is because you were jealous of him. That was different. That's my opinion. And yeah, so that's all I got to say about that.
I just got one question. Joe 14, do you live in Fort Lauderdale, Florida? Do you live in West Palm Beach area? I'm just curious because I'm just wondering. That's all. Just curious. That's all I got to say.
Yeah. I was going to say that I think social media is one of the worst things that happened to Sanders, because when he started getting a following on social media, he stopped. It seemed to become about like the getting the clout, than, working on his cases and spending more time on posts that are like wordy and they go nowhere, and you could clearly tell they were AI composed, right? So I think that's one of the worst things that happened to him. Plus, it was better. Sometimes there are things that you should keep to yourself. Sometimes his race obsession has really become like a TDS kind of syndrome. Because every post I see on there is like some race. It's like at a certain point, it's like, dude, maybe you might be thinking too much about all of this stuff, But yeah, I think again, I think this is engagement farming, and I think again that show needs to sink or swim on its own content. They need to, one of the problems we had when it was on this network is to asking them what exactly is the show about, what do they go after? And I think that's still a problem, and I think he needs to build it on his own and see how much effort it takes and how much hard work it takes to build a show that's that's engaging. And anytime we do talk about them, they reap the benefits of it. So that's what they're looking to do right now.
And just the other thing is, like, they eat off of us too. Like, if you listen, like, they're listening right now, and then that's how they're coming up on what they're going to talk about. Like, their points are driven totally off of the show, which shows how lazy and incompetent they really are. You know what I mean? Because, you know, most of the stuff that we talk about, you know, it comes from the mainstream, but a lot of it is stuff that we brought out. Like, we, you know, like they're going to bring up this guy now, right? They're going to talk about his run. Anything we talk about, they're following suit, and they always did that. They always did that. Sal, most of his points were never his points. They were my points. He just worded them a little slightly different. You know, he couldn't come up with his own ideas. And so, yeah, it's a total engagement farming and whatever, you know, and I'll be honest, bro, I always had a hard time watching it. It got a lot better with all of us working with him to make the show better. And it was palatable, but still it's not that engaging. And even now, I can't even watch it. And I don't hate him. I don't even look at it as competition, because I think there's a big ocean out there. There's billions of people out there. I don't even look at them as competition, although I know that we were always looked at as competition personally, professionally, whether it was social media, whether it was the podcast, whatever. I know there was always that deep down rooted competition with him against me, and I wasn't even looking at him, and I still not. But, like, I'll be honest, I would watch that show because it's things that I listen to, but I can't because it's literally just a rerun of the show. I'd rather just watch our show and make clips off of it. You know what I mean? I don't need to hear how they're going to spin it or what little innuendos they're going to throw at us. It's a waste of my fucking time. So I don't listen to it.
Yeah, this is where Sanders comes into play, because Sanders found himself on social media, started getting clout, and then started influencing the show. Because when the show got on his network, the show was big. I thought Sal was doing great on that show when he would bring on these people to talk about, you know, what happened to them, and bring up people and issues that you've never heard. Like, oh, and let's not forget when he brought on Dowd on that show. You know, I thought he was finding his foot. And at some point, Sanders got big on social media. And, you know, there was an episode where he went on Corey and they talked about the Guardians and possible partnership. And I think that's when things changed for the show. That's when it stopped finding its identity, and it adopted what the agenda was from Sanders. And that's where I really bowed out as a viewer myself, because, again, I used to watch that show every day. Every day when you used to see the comments in there, somebody thanking you in the chat or telling you to have a great day at the end, that was me doing it. Okay. So I was watching that show every day. So again, we don't wish bad luck on Sal. Okay. I wish him the best of luck and hope that he improves the show. And he eventually is no longer a prisoner of Sanders. And I hope that he wins his case, because what the job did to him is unfair. Okay. And that's just it.
Well, that's the point. So I want to go back to saying that I don't wish anyone bad, but I like to call out what's true and what's a lie. Here's what's true. Sal got screwed over. Sal should not have been terminated. Here's what's a lie. That Sal did everything right. Sal made a lot of mistakes. Let's be honest. Sal made a lot of mistakes. Would I have gone to Washington to see with Roger Stone? Absolutely not. Knowing what the NYPD is, would I put myself in that position? No. Should he have been terminated? Absolutely not. Here's what's true. Did we help Sal Greco from day one? Yes, we helped Sal Greco, and I wanted to help him. You know, here's what's a lie. That Sal is on a mission to help cops. Sal's always been about his own clout. Sal wants to boost himself. Sal wants to boost Sal, and in my opinion, Eric Sanders is no different. They're all more into the clout than anything else. They want to get that clout out there. And that's the reality. So things can be true, and there's lies at the same time. So, and Joe 6899, there's no doubt in my mind that his name is Jack. All right, I think we pretty much proved that. Show your picture. Show us that you're not Jack. All right, I can tell who you are. I did police work for a long time. So, Jack, I think you're Joe. If you are Jack, I think you're climbing up a tree you really don't want to climb. I don't wish them bad, but let's be honest. Sal wants clout more than anything else. And that's why he's got himself fueled in this drama. And that's why And he's a grown man. He got himself as a prisoner of Eric Sanders and the Guardians, things like that, because he wants to clout and find any path. The reality is, and now he's so far deep into it because this case doesn't appear to be going anywhere. With Eric Sanders, this case should have been closed and done. He should not have been terminated. Let's be honest. And I don't wish them bad, but let's tell the truth. And it's true. Yes, he did get free advertisement from this network, being on this network and being in the position he's now. Still having drama, or the drama that he wants to create with this network does help him. But I'm also I kind of question, is he racist? I do question that because he talks about racism so much. I kind of wonder what's his position. It's like sometimes you would see those movies. You ever see? I forgot. There's a movie I'm thinking about where there's a guy who claims he's so macho and he hates anyone that's gay, and he's so anti-gay. And at the end of the movie, he turns out to be gay. So I kind of feel like it's the same thing with Eric Sanders. He claims to be so anti-racism, but I kind of suspect the position he's in. Because why would you think it's a racist for a black man to run a mile and a half? That's the most ridiculous thing. It's absolutely ridiculous, but I wish them well. And in reality, I want to thank them because they are fans. Their key points come from this network. They watch the show. They spend all day. So for that, I appreciate it. I thank them. Doesn't bother us. We'll keep trucking. We'll keep moving. If it holds them down and bothers them, well, then they have to live in that. So the reality is, who's living in whose head? That's right. American Beauty. I appreciate it. I told you so back when it says American Beauty. Thank you so much. That's the movie. I appreciate it. So the reality is, who's living in whose head? Are we living in your head, Eric? Are we living in your head? I'm sorry. Are we living in your head, Jack? Or Joe 14%? Here's the reality.
No, yeah, it's ridiculous, dude. And just the last thing on it, it's like, you know, I thought that one of the best episodes ever on this platform was when Sal interviewed John Scola. I thought that was a great show. I thought that was unbelievable. I thought that's when he was at the best. But then you saw like clear narrative pushing. You saw people that he had criticized in the past, he no longer criticized. You saw the whole pushing and pulling of the narrative after the Guardians came on, and then with Faison, which I thought was a good interview, by the way. I don't think it was a bad interview. But after that, people that he had criticized previously, now he was massaging them and had like a totally different take on it. And
that show was fire. It was good. You got to admit, that was a good show.
And so like after that, I just, you know, and the fact that we would not say that the mile and a half run is racist. That was one of the bigger portions where you saw a real divide between us and Sal. And I don't think it's because Sal doesn't agree with us, because I had a conversation with Sal. I was like, Sal, you're gonna really tell me? You're gonna tell me a mile and a half's racist? Go ahead, tell me why. And, you know, he couldn't explain it to me because it's not, you know, and it was that. And then when it came to when we started talking about all of the pension fraud, which it clearly is, it's fraud, mismanagement, stealing of our pension system. When we started talking about, that's when the divide completely split. And that's when you saw, again, massaging of narrative. And we were getting a lot of pressure everywhere after that when we started talking about that. That was coming from external, internal, specifically majority, a lot of it from that show and from that whole side of the network. And that's when we turned into racists. And that's when we turned into that we should be jailed for giving our opinions. And that's when it was turned into we shouldn't be able to have a platform. We should get our First Amendment rights stripped of us. You know, it's, you know, I thought, you know, I was weird to get that from someone who claims to believe in civil rights. But that's when all of that narrative started really coming out. And so, you know, I don't wish good or bad. I just don't care. So let's get to the coffee and donuts. I got more important things to do than talk about these losers. Like I'm going to probably break out the power washer and power wash my house today, you know? So
are you going to be thinking about
much more important.
Are you going to be thinking about Eric Sanders while you're doing it?
No, definitely not. I might laugh if I do. I mean, it'll be a laugh, you know, it'll laugh. I think that's good. You know, I always love when cowards have me blocked, but put my name out there. And I always love when people call me names, but won't sit down and have a conversation with me, because it's super simple. Like I actually like talking about race. I like talking about DEI. These are issues that I think we need to have more conversations about. And I have no problem sitting down with anybody, anytime, anywhere. But the people that won't do that the same, you know that they're phony and they're liars and they haven't really well thought out positions on them. So yeah, you want to come prove that I'm a racist? Come right ahead. Come on the platform. Let us know.
Hey,
Yeah,
and Jack
you weren't
14, thanks for being a fan.
Yeah, you weren't racist when he was on the platform, you know, like every other show.
Yeah.
But you know, it's funny how much like pushback we seem to be getting when we started talking about the pensions, you know. In particular, that was when we were talking about Juanita Holmes, you know, and how exactly she gets to retire from the NYPD a third time. But yeah.
Oh no,
just
no,
thought that was
they can't
interesting.
criticize Juanita Holmes anymore over there because that's Eric Sanders' old partner. So they can't criticize that no more.
Yeah.
And cops don't need to be able to run a mile and a half. That's ridiculous.
If you run a mile and a half, you should get 3/4. That's gonna be the new rule now.
All right, let's do it. Let's do it, peoples. All right, Modern Samurai, baby. Great show today. Great job. Keep the conversation open. It's said that people are taken by these TikTok politicians rather than the things that actually affect their lives. Everyone have a great week and stay blessed. Yeah, 100%, dude. And that's why low information gives you terrible politicians. I personally believe the people in charge of us are the weakest, dumbest, and the worst of us.
But let me make it sound different so it doesn't sound like it's from the Sal Greco show. It's not low information, it's low tier.
He didn't again. I just want to go back on everything. Mostly everything that he said came from me, including low information. Like almost everything that he said, almost all of his terms. He heard something that I said and he ran with it and made it his own. That was again. So I don't, and low information really came from Rush Limbaugh. It didn't come from Sal Greco. You know what I mean? Again, everything's going to sound like it came by way of him because he took everything that we've ever said. So, I mean, it's but if you go back in time and you listen to it and you listen to when it was first used to when it started getting used, it's right there. It's told to you so back when. Shell used the West Indian Day parade. Poor ankle.
Exactly.
Speaking of using terms and phrases, it's funny. There's a certain show out there, the Sal Greco show, now uses the phrase 3-card Mamdani, and John Shell now uses the phrase 3-card Mamdani. Where did that come from? I invented that. Me and Jimmy Wagner were talking. He was talking about it's a 3-card hustle, and I was like, no, it's a 3-card Mamdani. And then I came up with that, and then we did a show on it, and we did a whole thing and a breakdown of what it was. And now it's being used for all of these other ways to explain it. But that's another thing that people stole.
Yeah. Yeah. John Shell is pivoting to. I guess he wants that time slot on the Finest now. Huh?
Yeah. And told you back when. Does Mamdani have federal clearance? Look, I doubt it, but I don't even think it's an issue at this point because Bill de Blasio didn't have it, Eric Adams didn't have it, and now we're at the point in time where the mayor of New York City can fly the plane blind. Right? Because that's what they've been doing. The last 3 mayors have been flying the plane blind. Right? I know we don't want the plane to crash, right? Because that's what I heard from Allison Esposito, the same line that we heard from Eric Adams. I'm the pilot of this plane, folks. Yeah, well, guess what? You got a blindfold on, so maybe it's time to get the fuck out of the seat, So I don't think he has federal clearance yet, and I don't think he's ever going to get it. And if he does get it, it's really irrelevant because could he be trusted with it? And is he going to be able to interpret that information properly? And is he going to make a good decision skill? Is he going to be able to show good decision making skills when he has to implement that? And I don't believe so, based upon his rhetoric. I don't believe so.
Well said, brother. Well said.
Did Mamdani? I don't know. I'm starting to lose it. When did Mamdani find out of the terrorist when we did? I don't know what you mean by that, dude. But we all knew that plot got foiled. Oh, I get what he's saying. Like, was he aware of that as that plot was being unfoiled? I'm gonna say probably not, dude. I'm going to say probably not. He probably found out about it before it was brought out to the public, but not before it was foiled. So,
Okay, you got a bigger monitor yet, John? You
no,
gotta
I'm going
looking
to
at
invest
those.
in a bigger monitor. I'm going to invest because I'm really my eyes are going. My eye doctor was right.
Yeah,
Listen,
yeah.
don't fight it, man. I've been fighting. I got I got glasses for reading up close, man. It's getting worse and worse. I fight it, but man, I need them. We're all gonna be like you. We're all gonna be glasses full time, brother.
It sucks, dude.
Yeah, if you're staring at a small screen for like 3 hours, you definitely will, guys. Yeah.
Yeah, I just
want to say, I think doing this network is what destroyed my eyes. You know, sitting here. So we're giving up a lot for people. You know, Eric Sanders. You know, we
just getting old, dude.
We get advertisement.
What's that? Old. It would just get old. It's the age.
Yeah,
it's the age. Everybody gets reading glasses at some point.
It's scary. It's scary. That's 50 is now closer to 40, but that's all right. You get better with age.
You know, I was changing like a bunch of light bulbs out yesterday, and I was like looking before I went to the store to go buy new ones, and I'm looking at, and I'm like, oh shit, I can't see this. I was like, I had to like go into the light. But the new light bulbs are cool, dude. The new light bulbs are awesome, bro. You could change it to whatever wattage you want, and you can make it whatever you want. So like if you wanted to be soft white, I was like, this is cool, bro. Like, you know. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I spent a little more. I got all those ones in case, you know. Yeah. All right. What do we got? We got Detective Nolan, $100. He says, John, Eric, and Marlon, when you are ready to do a deep dive on how the NYPD and Internal Affairs operated when I was there, have me on your podcast. Well, I didn't know you were in Internal Affairs, Nolan.
Interesting.
I can discuss in detail how the NYPD Internal Affairs did not take down Michael down. I can and will discuss that and much more. All right. Well, we appreciate it, Nolan.
Yeah,
appreciate the donation.
Thank you for the coffee donuts, brother. That's an interesting take, right? I mean, the reality is he's right? Because Suffolk County Police Department actually arrested him. That's an interesting take, brother.
Yeah, you got to look. You got to read all that stuff. I read about the Dirty 30 too. That was a pretty crazy case, and there was another case about a corrupt NYPD chief too, who was in charge of internal affairs, and that's a pretty interesting one too.
Interesting.
And they're all legit. I read a couple of books last year. I can't remember the names right off the bat, but Staten Island guy 321. He says, just what New York needs: another gullible coward who will donate his spine to get ahead. Politics doesn't attract leaders anymore; it attracts narcissists. He's using the cop thing to look tough because he really cowers. Right? In reality, he is a coward, but he spelled it with S.
You know, that's actually a very good statement. That's actually well said, and that's why I said earlier. I think that it's an interesting lane that he's taken to for politics, right? Because he's saying that he's given all anti-police agendas, but while he's saying he's still pro-police and he comes from the police department, so he's trying to balance both scales. Interesting lane. They'll do anything for votes. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, true.
Yep. Yeah, he's a phony. And he doesn't even know his neighborhood either. That's the funny part. Somebody pointed this out to me. I thought this was pretty funny.
Where's Jack? I mean, Joe.
He says, "Oh no, it's 11:05." So
there you go.
Where is it?
I'm a bet man. I'm gonna bet Joe is Jack.
I don't know. I don't care. So on Shamsul's website, on his social media, he puts this, that he's canvassing in Maspeth from 2 to 5 p.m. on the 14th, more Homestead Playground. So Queen's Crapper is an X account. Make sure you go over, give them the follow. They're pretty funny. So they point out that they're like, that park isn't even in Maspeth. So you're like, where's the park? You know, because I know Queens, but not great. And so that park is actually in Elmhurst. So, and if you see it here, you could see it, I don't know if you could see it on the map, but there's the playground and you could clearly see right there, it's Elmhurst. So he doesn't even know the neighborhood that he's running for. He's like putting shit out on social media, like naming places that being in the neighborhood they're not in. So it just shows what what a phony, But that's unfortunately that's what 100%. That's what's getting attracted. Opportunists, political opportunists.
Let's give this one to Stephen S. Brothers. There's a lot of sayings that we say in this network that we own, but Stephen S. is going to own this one. He says shameful, officially coined. Thank you, LOL. Yeah, let's call him shameful.
Shameful, baby.
That's right,
Shameful.
brother. Good job.
All right. Nolan again with another $100. He says, John, Eric, and Marlon, when you're ready to do a show on NYPD Internal Affairs, have me on. I will explain, expose, and answer all the questions. Mike, my social media is X. Okay. Right.
Who's he talking to? Mike Marino?
I guess. I don't know. The Smith 72. The Finest Unfiltered at Joe. 689. And then we got
Smith, I love you, brother.
The Finest 25. Present for duty. Good morning, all. Wishing you a safe week. So, look, we appreciate all of you. Great show today, fellas. I think we nailed it. I mean, who is Shamsul Haque? We have no idea. He's just like the upper echelon of the NYPD. He's willing to, on a dime, change his ethos, his 180 and 180 on all his political beliefs and public safety beliefs, and be gone.
Yeah.
So let's make a bet now. I think we all have agreement. We'll probably say the same thing. If Shamsul does not win, does he go back to the NYPD? I say yes.
Yes.
I'll say yes.
Commissioner.
I'll say yes too.
Yeah. Probably like community affairs commissioner or something. Some related position.
The dialogue unit
to his community. Yeah.
Patrick Donahue 2960 says a simple donation to help Marlon buy a new hat. I'm with you. I'm with you, Pat. I will fund that too. I will help fund that. Hunter is crazy. Like, listen, Hunter says a lot of good stuff, but Hunter is crazy sometimes, So, but Hunter says John D. McCarry has to answer those because YouTube requires it when people give money. That is not true at all, dude. It's just not. Like, we just do that. It's a segment on our show. We don't have to read it out. All the other shows get money. They rarely read it out. You know what I mean? And I'm talking like big shows. Like, they'll only read out like if you donate over 500.
True.
Is Hunter just being facetious? Because it sounds like he's joking. Because damn well we don't have to read everyone.
No.
That's pretty funny, though.
He says we have to read it out.
Come on, Hunter. You're smarter than that. We don't have to read it. That's a part of the show, man.
So we'll get Maul in a Yankee hat, I think.
I actually do have one. I've worn it on the show before.
Yeah, I see that. I like it.
Maul, I want to get you a hat that says XRP.
Nah, I'm trying to find one that has a gold bar on it, because I'm done with repping crypto. It's the New World Order as a system.
Come on, you
it's
don't think
2026
XRP,
and I'm
XRP, man. That's where I think it's going. I don't know. You don't think so?
Nah, that's junk. It's just money used. What it is a funding mechanism for Ripple. Okay, you buy XRP,
Yes.
They take that money in XRP and invest it in Ripple, the company. It's bogus, right? But it's 2026, and I'm about repping God's money, which is gold and silver, guys. That's where it's at. Yeah, so I need a shirt, a hat that has like a gold bar or something on it. Not this crypto. I think I'm done with crypto. Yeah.
Oh, this just Joe 14 is definitely Jack, man. Look at this. Right? Oh, Jack, how you doing, brother? It says, "Don't waste your money on these clowns. They take our tax money already with their pensions they should have never received." Yeah. Thank you, Jack.
But what he says?
We take the tax money with pensions.
Pensions we should have never received.
Marlon's pension got literally robbed. They took
what is he
all
talking
the money.
about? Yeah.
And his healthcare. Took all the money that he put in. They robbed it from him without due process, by the way. And I got literally like a quarter of what I would have got. So yeah, screw you, Joe. Mon Samurai says no better way to seek approval than to bash the organization that you had no courage to call out when you were working there. Yeah, sham fool, baby, sham fool. Stephen S.
Yeah, Stephen S. all the way, brother.
Yeah, so all right, peoples. All right, yeah. Let's see what we're gonna do for Wednesday. Tomorrow, 10-4 Tavern. They're gonna have on Lewis and Amon. I think you're going to hear someone who's not afraid to call out the political structure of New York.
Yep.
If I know any better. So let's see. We might see a stark difference. They had a former chief of the department on, and now they're going to have another former chief of department on back-to-back shows. And I think you're going to see two different shows. Put it that way. Two different shows are going to be out there. To stark contrast in what a chief of department was and what a chief of department has become.
I have my hopes for Lou Anamone. Lou Anamone has got a legacy within the NYPD. He's a legend, known for tough talk, and I hope that he lives up to it on Tuesday. So Tuesday, please check out 10-4 Tavern with Tom and Pete. Who's Who cast a guest. The show has been really growing. Awesome. Great job. And, of course, Wednesday, Executive Perspective. We'll be back Wednesday, too. And I look forward to Louis Anamone's interview, and I hope he lives up to that legend and that legacy. So, Lou Anamone, if you're watching this, man, we look forward to it. And please don't disappoint us, brother.
Yeah. I'm interested in this one, because a lot of these guys who come on and they're empty vessels, he would have chewed them out in Comstat or whatever meeting, And I think the problem with a lot of these guys, the problem with law enforcement now is there is no Bratton 1 anymore. There is no Louis Anamone anymore. There is no these guys who were kind of legends before. I think I'm hard pressed to find that guy in NYPD now, I think a lot of them would never put themselves out there to begin with to get to that far, I think it's all about politics and all about their what happens after they leave the job and their connections and their ability to get into that club after on that will prevent them from ever reaching to these heights again, because
it goes back to what I was saying last week on Friday. If anybody watch it, and I still feel this way. And the question is this, and ask yourselves the same thing. Do these chiefs actually ever retire? Yeah, physically their bodies are removed from the police department, but mentally they're still connected to the police department or want to be connected to the police department. I saw a video this morning, came up on social media, of Joe Fox. Joe Fox at a restaurant with a Chinese guy that has a Chinese restaurant, and talk about how gangs were trying to overtake the restaurant and the NYPD took care of it. And the Chinese guy says, "Oh, thank you, Chief. Thank you, Chief." And he says, "Oh, he's living the American dream." So he still called him Chief. And so I think these guys never leave. They never leave.
Well, I think it's worse than that. I think it's that they're too focused on staying in the club, too focused on what opportunities lay ahead of them by kowtowing to the political class, to the left, progressive political class, even though it's not what they believe, it's not it's not their belief system, but they're focused on those connections and maintaining those connections so they can, have a job in Wall Street, have a job in, like Shea and O'Neill. They both have corporate jobs making $1 million a year. And if you have, I think, in my opinion, these older chiefs, they weren't focused on that, and because they weren't focused on that, they were focused more so on doing a good job now. They became legends in the NYPD. And you'll never see that again because the guys now are all focused on after the NYPD and not doing the job at hand as chief. So just my opinion on that.
Spot on, brother. Spot on.
I just think you could see the real gap in testosterone levels and the real gap in no, I'm not even kidding. You could see, you could see the real gap in testosterone levels from generation down and how it comes down, and then actual moral integrity and spine. And so, Eric, I hear what you're saying, but I think law enforcement's like one of those professions you don't really ever retire from totally. And so I think you're going to hear a lot of angst and a lot of care and a lot of excitement. And you hear that from every member of the service after they retire. And I think you're going to hear that from Louis as well. So it might not sound like somebody who actually is retired. I mean, they did a what's it called by me? They did an Ironman by me, and it was the most poorly mismanaged thing I've ever seen in my life. The county commissioners in Jacksonville and St. Johns County who put this together should all be fired. They should never get elected to office ever again. It was the most dangerous thing I've ever seen. The dumbest. They literally shut down every major road all day. Every major, there was like no way to avoid it. And like the way they were having runners and bikers cross with cars. It was like the stupidest thing I ever seen. And I was literally ready to get out there and start directing traffic. And I was like, holy shit, I feel like I'm a cop again. Because I was like, I really felt exactly like how I would have felt at like I was at work. I literally pulled up. I'm like, what? Who came up with this idea, dude? And he's like, bro, don't ask me. I told them that this is a bad idea. I'm like, dude, someone's gonna get killed here. He's like, I know, dude, I know. But like, I was literally ready to get out and start directing traffic. I was like, this is ridiculous. And I think, you know, yeah, but like in the past, these guys, and especially Louis Anemone and guys like him, and even guys that don't like Louis Anemone, they didn't have a problem saying what they felt. Where today, those guys don't ever retire in retirement, but they're still afraid to say what the hell they were going to say. And these guys weren't. I think that's the major difference. Like these guys aren't afraid to say anything. And like the newer generation of law enforcement managers, because they're not leaders, they won't say anything. They won't say anything against the establishment. They won't. Everything they say is calculated and politically correct. Every single thing.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I just hope when he comes on the interview, this isn't a case of Bratton 2 versus Bratton 1. Because as we said, Bratton 2 is a whole lot different from Bratton 1, you know? So.
Well, I will say this. I say that their bodies leave the job and they stay connected because they want to leave that moment of opportunity and that window of opportunity. And I don't see Louis. The reason why I'm hopeful, and I think that Louis Anemone will actually speak the truth, is because I believe that door has closed for him, right? He's at an age where he's not looking for another opportunity, another job, unless he needs to pave the way for offspring. And that's why I often say they're looking for self-serving, but paving the way for offspring. So if they're paving the way for offspring or they're looking for themselves, that's when they don't tell the truth, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I agree. And Joe's saying that he knows where we all live. Joe, like we told you already, bro, nobody cares. Nobody's scared of you. Whenever you want, bro, we'll make you famous, dude. So, you know, stop with the threats about where we live.
Jack, you weigh 22 pounds. Seriously. Jack, you weigh 22 pounds.
I don't want to make anybody famous. I don't want to make anybody famous, but I gladly will. You know, I gladly will.
Jack weighs 22 pounds. I'm sorry, Joe. Joe weighs 22 pounds. We don't need to threaten you, please.
Yeah. I know where you live. Everybody knows where we live, bro. Who cares? What's your point? And you'll do nothing.
Jack,
you know where we live.
Yeah. What are you saying, Pat? Your post got cut off. So,
any chance Wednesday of Scott Monroe probably joining? I don't know. Scott, what do you think, bro? What do you think? Scott's not coming on. He just has people listening and giving him the key highlights, like NYPD Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch. You know, same thing. But she listens. You know, so Jessica, come on. You know, we'd love to hear from you. And Scott, we'd love to have you back. And I'm still trying to understand why that meeting hasn't occurred with Marlon for over a year and a half. What is this? He says, as of the results of the 2020 presidential poll, they hinted the efforts to curtail the CCRB or hire Marlon. Yeah, no. They needed to hire a first grader who did 30 years, so that didn't happen. And the presidential polls lost the time. We'll never know the results, even though we know it was 94% that detectives wanted Trump in office. And Scott's going to continue to feed off of Scott and the PBA, may I add now, are going to continue to feed off of the NYPD, off of the Finest Unfiltered, you know, to try to like say, oh, look what we're doing. We're doing this. Those guys are wrong. See, we actually are doing something. When in reality, they're not really doing much.
Listen, 3 hours and 12 minutes into it. Thank you for watching Finest Unfiltered. It's Monday morning. We hope you had a good weekend and hope this starts your day, on a good way to go. So we appreciate it. Of course, as we said, Tuesday, 10 for what's happened. Wednesday, we'll be back as always. I appreciate it. The engagement is awesome in the chat. Anyone who's just watching, friends and listeners, we appreciate it. And if you're watching and you still haven't subscribed yet, we ask, please like, share, and subscribe. Just hit that subscribe. It's free. It helps us grow, and it keeps you engaged. So please do it. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. Finest Unfiltered, baby.
Yeah, absolutely. Joe Mango says, do we think of any of the trolls? Absolutely not. We don't. Who cares? So that's it, people. Yeah, we'll be back on Wednesday. And that's it. I don't know what Ron and Rob are doing on Wednesday, but I'm sure that'll be a good show too. So we'll see you again on Wednesday. But make sure you check out the 10-4 Tavern tomorrow night, 7:05 p.m. Wherever you're watching, listening to this show, please do us a favor. Do the like, share, subscribe, leave us a review. We appreciate it. Helps move us up in the algorithm. Molly, got anything before we run, brother?
No, I'm done. You guys have a great day. It's sun's out and it's warm, so you know what that means, right? Pay attention and stay alert.
I'm sorry. I gotta laugh because my mom says no. But let me pull up this chart real quick.
Nah, dude, we always forget. We didn't even talk about the 9/11 stuff. There's just so much in the news cycle that it's like after the episode, we're like, oh shit, we forgot to talk about this. So
Yeah.
No, there's a ton of stuff. I have a list of things that we didn't do, but that's it's like every show, so it's no big deal. We still went 3 hours. So
so sun's out, guns out, guys. Be safe, stay alert, and I'll see you on Friday.
Much love, brother.
All right, Finest Unfiltered, baby. We'll be back at you.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?